Chapter 1680. As for how ferocious an eternal level expert was, only those who had come from that era would know. Monks had 4,000 reincarnations, but their cultivation was far more than that. If they lived for 100 years in each reincarnation, they would have 40,000 years of cultivation, which could be said to be 40,000 years of true cultivation. However, only the Golden Lamp monk himself knew the specifics of how much cultivation he had. Even though Li Xian and Zhang Ziqin had been beaten by Wang Ling, that was because their opponent was Wang Ling. In fact, in the supreme winding up corpse painting, any eternal level expert couldn't be underestimated. Take the Heartless Patriarch, for example. Since he had the ability to escape Dao ancestor Wang's restraints and slip away under his nose, his strength was naturally unparalleled. As the battle went on, Na Wei and the ancient god giant controlled by the god brain became stronger and stronger as the god brain's activation increased. As their enemies, Battle Sect, and the others naturally couldn't underestimate them. At the very next second, the ancient god giant's body underwent another transformation. As the eyes on his head shone with a brilliant light, streaks of blood marks appeared all over his body. A ferocious and domineering aura filled the entire supreme world. This aura was so shocking that it turned into waves of air that swept across thousands of miles. Then, fresh nerves and blood vessels condensed from these blood patterns, causing his body to expand once again. In a flash, the ancient god giant's muscles swelled and his bones elongated to a height of 100 feet. His body was more than twice as sturdy as before, and black armor began to condense all over his body. Pengu Overlord Body Protection? Jin Deng frowned slightly. Things looked a little troublesome now. He could sense that this wasn't the final and complete form of the ancient god giant. Na Wei's activation of the god brain had just reached 80%, but he could actually form this Pengu Overlord body. Against this Overlord body, Xiang Yi's 8,000-year bullet just now had only tickled him, let alone piercing him. This aura was so astonishing that it increased the sense of oppression in this supreme world all at once, making people feel suffocated. Be careful, ladies. Seeing this, Monk Jin Deng hurriedly protected Lotus Sun and Jamiya Ryoko, and immediately took them into his core world. What he was most worried about was the safety of Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kamiya, because once these two people were injured, the result was terrible. It was nothing more than triggering two endings. That was the destruction of the world, and the destruction of the world. At the same time, on the other side, Wang Ling also sensed strong fluctuations coming from another supreme world in the infinite heavens. He controlled the heavens. The power of the world of heavens could reach any space in the universe. Even if one was in the world of heavens, one could easily sense the resonance from the other lower spaces. He knew that this was not the full power of that smell. With the passage of time, he would become even stronger. Although Anwan and Lung Ming were in the supreme world on the other side, they were clearly enemies that he could easily deal with, and he didn't think it was worth it for his little sister to take this risk. After all, Anwan had just been born. As the master of Shadow Dao, although she was powerful, she would still have to bear some risks if she were to fight against a boss monster in a map. For example, hair loss. If it was a little more serious, he might even bruise his skin. Thus, he decided to settle the battle under him as soon as possible and stop playing around. Of course, he wasn't doing this entirely for Wang Nuan. After all, his birthday was coming up soon. If he didn't settle it now, and this dragged on until the day after tomorrow, wouldn't it be a huge loss if he couldn't get his birthday present? Right. He wasn't going there to save Lotus Sunday. He just wanted to make sure that the people who bought his present wouldn't get hurt. At that moment, in the world of heavens, a massive millstone broke through the clouds as Wang Ling's King's Eye released endless eye power. This millstone had a radius of 3,000 zhang, and it was so shocking that people couldn't speak. At that moment, it was as if heaven and earth had been connected. Endless thunderbolts fell from the clouds. Electric currents ran rampant on the millstone, and mystical runes that no one could understand appeared on the millstone. At that moment, the 9 hosts were completely stupefied. They had thought that they could fight Wang Ling. It wasn't until the instant Wang Ling took out this millstone that they realized that they had almost no chance of winning this battle. At that moment, the 9 remaining hosts felt their vision darken, and a sharp pain radiated from their bodies. They were utterly shocked. They had never thought that the man in front of them would actually have such a terrifying thing. The Great Universe Chaos Millstone. This was a supreme chaos magic weapon derived from the fusion of the power of many great Daos and the power of chaos. Back in the domain of the gods, a chaos magic weapon with only a few % of the power of chaos had been fought over by several great Dao family heads. But this Great Universe Chaos Millstone that Wang Ling had taken out now had 97% of the power of chaos. It was almost full. So here was the question. What on earth was this chaos millstone used for? As far as cultivators on Earth knew, spells could be divided into levels 1 to 15. Among them, spells that surpassed the 10th grade could already be recognized as transcendent spells. And this Great Universe Chaos Millstone was a combination of super spells. Furthermore, the lowest level spell was at level 99 and above. It could reach as high as level 99. In other words, all the creatures targeted by the Chaos Millstone would be randomly chosen by one of the spells from the lowest level to the highest level of 999, and receive the punishment. If they didn't die straight away after the punishment, they would receive a reward from the Chaos Millstone, and might even be able to directly advance. But if they died, they wouldn't even have the right to be reincarnated, and would be directly destroyed. The 9 hosts were all ancient creatures. They had only heard legends about the Chaos Millstone, but had never seen it with their own eyes. They didn't believe that such a thing actually existed in the universe. Until now, when this Chaos Millstone appeared in front of them for real. They instantly realized that they had lost the upper hand. Now the 9 hosts realized what was going on. Wang Ling had been using level 10 spells the whole time just now, and had simply been toying with them. The gap between level 10 spells and the lowest level 99 spells was really outrageous. No matter how strong their resurrection abilities were, under the bombardment of a level 99 spell, they would definitely be smashed to smithereens. Could they survive to receive a reward? That was simply impossible, because no one had ever survived an attack from the Chaos Millstone. The most outrageous thing was that before the Chaos Millstone launched its attack, a very pleasant female voice actually came from the Chaos Millstone. Congratulations, creature number SCB-002. You are about to receive a level 99 spell as punishment. Heaven Burial Godfire. The spell will be ready in 1 second. There was no time to react. In the next second, as the Chaos Millstone turned gently, a pillar of fire 10,000 feet high rose out of thin air from under 002's feet. For a moment, the flames soared into the sky, and the red light of hell illuminated the entire heavenly world. 002 was burned to ashes on the spot, forever becoming a speck of dust in the universe. Chapter 1681. The expressions of several of the shelter creatures instantly changed. This was too strong. It was simply a dimensional reduction attack. Number 002's battle strength was already above average among the shelter creatures, but under the effect of the Chaos Millstone, he couldn't even withstand the lowest level 99 spell. When the Heaven Burial Divine Fire's fire bamboo rose from the ground, it was accompanied by hellish devouring flames, so scorching that it swallowed up the sky and the earth. The other shelter creatures instantly jumped away and hid as far away as they could. Number 002, who had been precisely targeted, wasn't so lucky. When he turned his head, he had already been reduced to ashes, and the place where he had died had turned into a sea of fire. From a distance, the place was drowned in the aura of the Great Tao, and all kinds of laws and order intertwined to form a forbidden zone that no one dared set foot in. Forget taking a direct hit from the Heaven Burial Divine Fire's pillar of fire. Even the sea of fire left behind by it wasn't something that any of the shelter creatures here could withstand. One had been killed in an instant. Now there were 8 shelter creatures left. Furthermore, none of them could escape. When the millstone had been summoned, Wang Ying had also appeared, arms crossed as he secretly observed on the side. He was glad that he had chosen to return to Wang Ling's body back then. Otherwise, he might have ended up the same as these shelter creatures. Because this Chaos Millstone was also an ability that he didn't possess. He could see that it was a product of the King's Eye. As a shadow, the only thing that he couldn't replicate from Wang Ling was the King's Eye. He had never thought that this man's king's eye could actually produce such a godly object. A chaos weapon with 97% power of chaos, and close to 100%. Just looking at it made one feel like they had given up all hope of survival. The most outrageous thing was, in that moment, these seemingly fearless shelter creatures were actually forced to speak the human language, and they started to kneel and beg Wang Ling for mercy. We were wrong. Several of the shelter creatures knelt on the ground. Although they had been making strange noises since the beginning of the battle, and hadn't said a word, that didn't mean they couldn't speak the human language. Deep in their bones, these hosted creatures still held a kind of contempt for human cultivators. They believed that human cultivators were nothing more than low-level creatures derived from the great Tao. But now, when this kind of low-level creature appeared in front of them with such crushing destructive power, the involuntary fear and awe they felt forced them to bow their heads and surrender in front of Wang Ling, giving up all their dignity as they knelt on the ground. Wang Ling swept an indifferent glance over the host creatures without saying a word. He was not a devil. He had indeed thought of leaving a few of the old Sun faction's sheltered creatures for subsequent research. The few that had surrendered now were the sheltered creatures of 005, 007, and 009. And they were all from the old days. This was exactly what Wang Ling wanted. So he used the king's eye to move the death omen star away from the three containment creatures. Almost immediately, the Chaos Millstone received the order to cancel the punishment against the three hosts. Moreover, it released a beam of golden light to protect the three hosts from the shockwaves. At the same time, the next round of punishment began. In the Chaos Millstone, the indifferent and emotionless female voice rang out again with the supreme might of the great Tao, as if it represented the heavens. Congratulations, host SCB-003. You are about to receive the punishment of a level 188 spell. 8 tones death knell. The spell will be ready in 1 second. As soon as the voice fell, a huge ancient black bell appeared in the air. It was faint and illusory, but carried with it an extremely terrifying threat of death. An invisible sound wave was transmitted precisely, containing 8 different sins and emotions: pride, jealousy, wrath, sloth, greed, lust, gluttony, and not voting monthly. These 8 kinds of sins and emotions were outlined together, integrated, and condensed into a horrendous roar of the great path like a hemp rope. It swallowed number 003 in an instant. He was directly hit by the sound wave, and then disintegrated into fine powder. Before he died, he let out an extremely mournful scream, and tried to use his own methods to resist, but his resistance was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Because what number 003 was facing was a level 188 directional spell. The pain of being shattered into powder by the sound wave was no different from death by 1,000 cuts. No, it was even more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. Especially in the moments before death, one would feel as if countless knives were stabbing into their bodies and cutting off their flesh bit by bit. This was a merciless massacre and annihilation. At the moment when number 003 was dealt with, a few more new hosts knelt down and chose to submit. But this time, the Chaos Millstone didn't stop its punishment. The Chaos Millstone's redemption mechanism existed, but that didn't mean that it could be redeemed without limit. If someone didn't surrender the first time, the Chaos Millstone would automatically blacklist them, and by then it would be too late. Even with Wang Ling's permission, the Chaos Millstone couldn't stop. Unless the entire Chaos Millstone was destroyed. Faced with these creatures of the old days, Wang Ling naturally couldn't destroy the Chaos Millstone, which would be of great use in the future. It could only be said that the chance for redemption was in his own hands. After dealing with the third host creature, Wang Ling opened the King's Eye space again and put 005, 007 and 009, who had already surrendered, into it. As for the rest, everything in the heavenly realms could be easily handled by the Chaos Millstone. The most important battle was on the other side of the battlefield. In a situation where Anwan's hair could be burned off at any moment or she might get hurt, no matter how expressionless her big brother was, he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Wang Ling realized that he did seem to have changed a little since Anwan was born. He could feel a little of the human warmth that he had never cared about in the past. But for some reason, there were times when he still felt stifled. Especially when he saw Lotus Sunday. There was always a knot in his heart that he couldn't untie. Sometimes it would even make him ache dully. And now, Wang Ling called it an ill-fated relationship. But from the looks of it, this ill-fated relationship wouldn't be broken so easily. Even Wang Ling himself didn't realize it. Unknowingly, some people had already entered his world. She was sparkling, but in that world full of darkness, she didn't seem to be so sparkling. But even so, at this time, that little bit of brightness was already the only light in that world. At that moment, when Wang Ling opened his eyes again, in front of him, he had already locked onto the supreme world where the ancient god giant resided. Below, it was time for him to perform. Chapter 1682. As the god brain came to life, the pressure from the ancient god giant intensified. He stood tall, and his huge body exuded an indescribable majesty. Every move he made exuded the aura of a supreme being. He looked very much like Pangu, who split the heavens and earth apart. At least in Ryoko's opinion, there wasn't much difference between the two. She was hiding in Golden Lamp Monk's inner world with Lotus Sunday compared to Lotus Sun, who was already used to such things. The shock in Kamiya Ryoko's heart could not be any greater. Only those who had personally experienced it would understand. Given her cultivation and talent, Ryoko felt that if she hadn't met Ajua Lotus Sun, Wang Ling and the members of Battle Sect, she probably wouldn't have been able to witness such a grand scene in her lifetime. The visual impact, pressure, and shock brought about by such a close distance were simply too astonishing. It was far from comparable to the fictional scenes of cultivators fighting in real life plus CG special effects in cultivation cinemas. Don't be too nervous, Yoshiko. We're safe in Senior Golden Lamp's inner world. Lotus Sun comforted her. In fact, with her current combat strength, with the protection of Mysterious Sea's sword chi, she didn't need the protection of the inner world at all, but Senior Golden Lamp still kept her here. In fact, she understood why. He wanted her to comfort Ryoko Kwamiya. As a small cultivator, it was easy to get carried away when seeing such a big scene for the first time. It could easily lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, and adrenaline levels. Lotus Sun had also experienced this feeling back then, so how could she not understand? But now, he had gotten used to it after looking at it for a while. Furthermore, Lotus Sun guessed that given Ajua's personality as a peerlessly good man who doted on his wife, it was highly likely that he would apply for a lot of girlfriend benefits for Ryoko Kamiya. Her realm would definitely advance by leaps and bounds, and she might even have all kinds of enviable magic treasures. Of course, what Lotus Sun envied wasn't battle prowess, magic, or magic treasures. As long as she was willing to ask for these things, she felt that Wang Ling absolutely wouldn't be so stingy with her. So the crux of the problem was still to pamper him. A girl, of course. What she wanted the most was to be pampered. Did she lack money to buy all these dazzling magical weapons and spells? She only hoped that the blockhead would take the initiative. But for now, Lotus Sun felt that this was an extravagant wish. The Divine Brain's activation is about to reach 100%. Today, I will show you how powerful it is to possess the strongest Divine Brain in the entire universe. At that moment, the ancient god giant's voice came out of his body. It was a kind of mental wave that was emitted through brain waves. He did not open his mouth, but his voice was transmitted to everyone's ears. Then, in front of everyone's naked eyes, the ancient god giant's body started to shrink. In just a moment, it had shrunk to the size of an ordinary person. This was a smaller version of the ancient god giant, but it was more capable than the original. He actually condensed those ancient godly weapons that he absorbed into his body into the size of cell particles on his body. Monk Golden Lamp frowned as he saw through Nawei's change at a glance. A total of 27,000 new ancient mystic weapons had been compressed by the god brain to the size of a cell. This also meant that Nawei's physical body was much stronger than before. It was like a sponge that had been compressed to the limit. When the density decreased, its strength also increased. Of course, this was not the scariest part. The scariest part was, these new ancient mystic weapons that had turned into cell particles could really divide inside his body like human cells. Even if a new ancient mystic weapon only had the strength of a Tao god, perhaps when the 27,000 Tao gods merged into one, The people of Battle Sect might be able to fight back with their combined strength, but if they continued to divide, in the end, there would be hundreds of millions, or even tens of billions, and it would be hard to say what the outcome would be. So that's what you were aiming for when you fused with him from the beginning. Loopy Toad also started to get nervous. Although Nawe had become smaller, after being compressed, his aura was becoming stronger and stronger as his body continued to divide. Instead, he was even harder to deal with than the ancient god giant had been at the beginning. Nawe, who had shrunk to the size of a normal human, had changed his appearance as well. He was extraordinarily handsome and moving. His entire body was fair, and his firm and refined muscles were carved on his body, making him look like a work of art. He wasn't wearing anything on his upper body, and his white Taoist robe hung loosely around his waist. From a distance, it looked like a pure and holy white dress. Nawe's original body was that of an old man with a beard. Who would have thought that after merging with so many new ancient mystic weapons, his appearance and form would change fundamentally? At this time, his silver hair fluttered down, exuding an astonishing domineering aura. His unadorned white Taoist robe fluttered in the wind. With one step, thunder and lightning struck, and the wind swept away the clouds. Using his body as a guide, he turned into a beam of light and rushed toward Monk Jin Deng. This speed was so astonishing that it was like a thunderclap on the ground. It was even more astonishing than distance shrinking. Although Monk Jin Deng had reacted quickly when Nawe made his move, he had yet to control his response to this move. After a hurried palm strike, a shocking explosion erupted at the same time as the two palms collided. In that instant, with the explosion point as the center, a huge bottomless pit with a radius of several hundred feet appeared out of nowhere in the Supreme World. Then, under the influence of the nomological laws of the Supreme World, it continuously shrank and repaired itself. The impact of this palm was so powerful that blood seeped out of the corner of Golden Lamp Monk's mouth, but he still had the strength to fight. At the same time, everyone in Battle Sect also knew that Nawe's god brain would only become stronger after it was activated to 100%. So this battle had to end as soon as possible and couldn't drag on any longer. Everyone focus fire. Together. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said at that moment. In this situation, there was no need for strategy or command. Since they had decided to focus fire, they would naturally bring out their own unique skills. On Battle Sect's side, everyone cooperated very well. As if they had agreed beforehand at that moment, everyone's eyes turned to Zhou Zi on one side. Zhou Zi immediately raised his hands in surrender. Seniors, what do you want? In his desperation, he already had no time to explain. Zi, listen to me. He immediately grabbed Zhou Zi by the collar and directly threw him to Golden Lamp Monk. Come Zi, let's go. Golden Lamp Monk caught Zhou Zi and stepped forward to cast the 100% Blessed Light spell on him. The Great Concentration Spell. It actually directly compressed Zhou Zi into the size of a sniper rifle bullet. At that moment, Zhou Zi finally understood what this group of people wanted to do, but he was powerless to resist at all. Because in the next second, Xiangyi had already loaded and stuffed him into the Nine-Yang Divine Sword. I'll help too. Then, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gave Zhou Zi a portion of the effect of his strengthened soul suppression ring, and added a buff. In case anything happened to Zhou Zi, he could immediately revive on the spot. Then Loopy Toad turned back into its dog form, and used the swallowing spell to widen its mouth, so that Xiangyi could enter it and shoot. The combination of the swallowing spell and the sniper rifle provided an effect similar to that of a loudspeaker's turret. I'll help too. Everyone went forward. As a koi, Qinzong naturally couldn't sit idly by. He also jumped into Loopy Toad's mouth and grabbed the Nine-Yang Divine Sword with Xiangyi. And the moment he pulled the trigger, Wang Nuan and Lung Ming acted at the same time. One used the power of Shadow Dao to double the bullet's strength. The other used his sword chi to open a path for the bullet to avoid interference from external objects. And so the next second, it was accompanied by a loud bang. The most powerful bullet in the universe shot out of the Nine-Yang Divine Sword and accurately aimed at Nawe's head. Chapter 1683. Boom. At this moment, the entire supreme world was shaken by this Zhou Ziyi's bullet. Na Wei's expression was calm at first, because as the ancient divine weapon in his body continued to split like cells, his physical strength would only grow stronger. He would not be afraid of Xiang Yi's bullet, which was formed from his cultivation base, even if it was tens of thousands of years later. However, when he saw that everyone in the battle sect was united, and that everyone had used their unique skills and poured them into this bullet, his heart, which had been as calm as still water, could not help but jump. He had never thought that the Nine-Yang divine sword could be used in such a way. Using a living person as a bullet. This kind of imaginative operation was the first time Na Wei had seen something like this. Even with his vast knowledge of the past and present after inheriting the Pantheon brain. At this moment, he felt a sense of tension in his brain. If he was hit by this bullet, without a doubt he would die. Therefore he could not let this happen. Boom. At this moment, in the sky, endless lightning struck down, destroying everything. Time in the supreme world seemed to have frozen, and gravity was adjusted. All the power was condensed and exploded, all for the sake of stopping Zhou Ziyi's bullet that was heading straight for his head. At this moment, intense rumbling sounds caused the world to crumble. Endless supreme auras extended out in this place, filling up the entire void space. Countless cracks formed in the supreme world from all directions. All the boulders in the paramount world floated up, and rushed toward the bullet that was designed to weaken its power. However, Lung Ming's sword chi protection was especially on point. Compared to the dark scene of the collapse of the entire supreme world, that little bit of green light seemed to be nothing. But it played a vital role, protecting the bullet as it advanced bravely. Foolish descendants, you don't even know what the power of eternity is. Na Wei's heart was full of dissatisfaction, because among these people from the battle sect, other than the Golden Lamp monk, almost no one could be called a true eternal one. Even if they came out from the time-secret realm, they were just defective goods that sought quick success. They did not understand what the pride and lofty ideals of an eternal were. A true eternal being was someone who had lived from that era to the present. Their memories were the whole story, and they controlled the ancient epic that ordinary cultivators could not touch. It was precisely because of this that Na Wei wanted to use his own strength to face the difference in value between him and these cultivators of the later generations. As a senior, he wanted to tell these young cultivators what it meant to be a dimensionality reduction attack that was not on the same level as them. But now, with Zhou Ziyi's bullet that was about to take his life, Na Wei's mind began to waver. He began to doubt whether his thoughts were wrong, and he even wondered if he was really old. In the face of this indomitable bullet, Chen Xiaoyan was shocked. At this moment, Na Wei realized that his resistance with all his might seemed to be useless. Zhou Ziyi's bullet was too strong. It had the power to destroy the world, as if it could sever karma. In that short moment, no matter how Na Wei tried to use the Pantheon brain to deduce the bullet's future, his mind went blank. He can actually do this. Na Wei's spirit fell into a momentary stagnation. What a pity, just a little bit more and I'll be invincible. After saying this, he sighed softly and slowly closed his eyes. Thanks to the combined efforts of everyone in Battle Sect, Zhou Ziyi's bullet finally accurately pierced Na Wei's head and hit the bullseye. His entire head exploded in an instant. His head was separated from his body, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. The space had directly swallowed it up the instant the bullet had passed through. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't expected this well-coordinated attack, which everyone had worked together, to be surprisingly effective. By the way, what should we do with Z? If we don't stop him, won't he just keep flying? It wasn't until he finished shooting that he suddenly thought of this problem. That won't happen. My Nine-Yang Divine Sword has a resource return function, and bullets that I shoot will eventually return to me. Brother Z is no exception. Xiangyi smiled. But I really never thought that there would actually be a way to play with human bullets. But did we really kill him? Loopy Toad was a little doubtful about this. That Na Wei just now was really close to being invincible. As long as the God Brain was fully activated, even with Wang Nuan's current strength, she might not be able to fight Na Wei one-on-one for a few more years before she grew up. He's indeed dead. I can feel that Nawei's aura has disappeared. It's completely gone, Qinzong said at that moment. Although he said this, the expression on his face was the same as Loopy Toad's. There was a certain solemnness in it. The moment Nawei died, Qinzong felt that he had understood a lot of things. Since ancient times, these immortals had pursued supreme power, and until just now had even regarded later generation cultivators as ants. It could be said that this was the immortals' arrogance. But the truth was that the cultivation world of later generations was indeed no longer as good as the immortals' era, when heroes contended for supremacy. Although the current era was an era of scientific cultivation for all, it wasn't clear whether they had progressed or regressed compared with the immortals' era. It was hard to say. Everyone waited in the supreme world for a while. They had originally planned to wait for Nawei to die, and for the supreme world to collapse even more before they focused their fire to break through. But very quickly, grenade-throwing senior immortal suddenly realized that the supreme world seemed to have suddenly paused at some point. How's that possible? He frowned. The master of the supreme world was already dead, so it was only a matter of time before the world collapsed. No, it's not over yet. At that moment, Monk Jindeng saw a pure and holy light in front of him. Without thinking, he shrank the ground to an inch and turned into a streak of rainbow light as he flashed over. The rest of the battle sect members followed closely behind. Then, the scene in front of them dumbfounded them once again. In the air, a human brain shining with silver light was actually taking shape. The God Brain is 100% activated. Jindeng immediately knew what had happened. It turned out that in the last moment before the bullet had smashed the God Brain, Nawei's God Brain had completed a synchronized 100% activation. But for some reason Jindeng had a feeling. He felt that the person who had come back to life was no longer Nawei. Instead, it was filled with an aura of old age, loneliness, desolation and death. Rip. Lung Ming slashed out with his sword. In the end, his sword chi didn't harm the God Brain itself. This God Brain was actually illusory and didn't exist in the same space as them. Instead, it had used a method of space division to hide itself. Then, it continued to shine with silver light, and blood vessels began to grow with the brain as the center. Finally, they formed a spiral, and little by little, they converged into the appearance of the handsome young man from before. It was just that this young man no longer spoke in Nawei's voice. Jindeng, long time no see. How are you? The young man curled his lips and smiled as he familiarized himself with his new body. Monk Jindeng sighed and replied, Wuxin, in the end you still survived this way. The person in front of him wasn't just anyone. It was Nawei Shifu, the heartless patriarch himself. Back then, he was the only one who had deceived Dao Patriarch Wang and deceived the world. Chapter 1684. With the resurrection of the heartless ancestor in this way, the master of the supreme world was replaced, and new cracks no longer formed, and there was a tendency to gradually heal. This was the first cultivator in the entire universe to achieve complete mechanization of himself. There were only rotating ice wheels and oil left in his body, so no matter where he went he was always silent, and it was impossible to detect his existence through normal spiritual senses. At that time, the monk remembered very clearly that Heartless had been ostracized by the other ancient beings, and called a monster of the cultivation world. However, it was this monster that escaped Dao Ancestor Wang's punishment in the end. Not only did it use a fake body to deceive Dao Ancestor Wang, it even secretly developed an ancient divine weapon to help the grave god create a batch of mechanical cultivators that had yet to be completely wiped out. So Heartless came back to life in this way. Is this also part of your plan? Monk Golden Lamp understood very well. I wanted to share the joy of success with Nawei. But unfortunately, the development of cultivation technology will eventually be accompanied by sacrifices. I did leave a backup plan, yes. But, Heartless said coldly, in this way, I resurrected by borrowing a body. It was not my intention. So I gave Nawei a chance. As long as the activation of the God Brain is below 99%, the body can still be controlled by him. Once the limit is crossed, I will take over. He said it like this, and he said it very sincerely, as if he was not lying. At this point, There was no reason to continue lying. Monk Golden Lamp knew very well that the God Brain was very powerful. Once it reached 100% activation, it could even distort reality and create a new world. Therefore, as long as the God Brain was not destroyed, in theory, Heartless would be in an indestructible state. And he only needed to hide the God Brain. Zhou Ziyi's bullet just now had indeed hit Na Wei's skull. But at the same time, after the Heartless ancestor took over the battle, he began to quickly control the entire battle situation, and the first thing he did was to divide the God Brain into layers. The God Brain that they had smashed was transformed by the God Brain's ability to divide into layers at the critical moment. And the real God Brain had been hidden by Heartless. This method was very similar to some boys who like to create hundreds of new folders of indescribable films to set up a maze, and also label the folders with the words, "I want to study hard." In the end, it was actually a similar trick. As long as the God Brain was alive, Heartless was alive. Now that the primordial ones were no longer in the mood to take over the battlefield, the nature of the Paramount World changed. The Paramount World, which was originally a huge stone array, suddenly turned into a dark, scorched earth that was filled with a deathly stillness. Countless sparrow-like blackbirds with extremely long beaks circled in the air, giving off an ominous feeling. Chaos Bird of Death. Monk Jindang was in a trance as he recognized the creature's origin. At the same time, he was secretly surprised. That was because this was a type of bird that had gone extinct since ancient times, and was also an uncountable number of creatures that were born from the chaos. Chi. Suddenly, a bird of death turned into a pitch-black light and swooped down from the distance. It was extremely fast like a ghost, bringing with it a powerful pressure. No one thought that a sparrow-sized creature could give off such a terrifying sense of oppression. It really wasn't that big. However, he did not fear death at all. They launched a suicide attack here. Those who were directly hit by the Chaos Bird of Death's beak would be dragged into the chaos and await death. However, as an Eternal One, Monk Jindang was naturally not so easy to deal with. He set up the indestructible Vajra light, forming layers of barriers in an attempt to resist the Bird of Death's attack. However, the Bird of Death in the air seemed to have already expected this move from the monk. It changed its attack direction at the last moment, and stabbed toward Qinzong in the distance. To be honest, Qinzong's reaction was a little slow. After all, he was only a Dao god. Such combat power could not fight against a terrifying extinct creature like the Bird of Death. He froze in place. As a result, the Bird of Death directly passed by his scalp and smashed behind him. Immediately, there was a big explosion behind Qinzong, and a round pit with a radius of 100 feet was blasted by the overflowing chaos chi. Qinzong had always been confident that he was the only koi in the cultivation world, and had nothing to fear. He was indeed lucky to have dodged the attack just now. However, for some reason, when the Bird of Death passed by his scalp, he still felt a sense of fear as if he was facing death. I see. Is the one standing over there a great success in gathering destiny? Apart from Monk Jindang, he didn't know the rest of the people standing here, and he didn't get any memories of these people from Na Wei. Therefore, he summoned these birds of death just to test, but he didn't expect to test out an extraordinary person. The Chaos Bird of Death was a symbol of bad luck. It was an existence that specialized in restraining destiny. Perhaps one attack would fail, but if a few more were prepared, the situation might not be so. In the past, many of the extinct chaotic creatures were actually not really extinct. Instead, they were taken by Wu Xian and transformed. Now these transformed chaotic creatures were like him, becoming silent existences that could not be locked on by normal sensing means. Therefore, chaotic creatures like the Bird of Death, which had the ability to attack in a suicidal manner, became a natural killing machine. When thousands of birds of death hovered in the air like a black cloud, the sense of shock and oppression was self-evident. Even Qinzong began to panic, because these birds of death that divided destiny were indeed affecting him. He could clearly feel that the auspicious cloud above his head was weakening. How could this be? He couldn't believe it. It was just that a different person was operating it, but its aura was completely different from before. This was the Eternal One. In a scorched world that seemed like the end of the world, Wu Xian's body was emitting a snow-white light. He stood there, holy like a god, with a great and immortal aura. At the same time, he was also releasing an extremely terrifying spiritual wave that froze the people of the battle sect in place. Qinzong was a person of great destiny. To be honest, Wu Xian didn't want to kill Qinzong just like that. If he could be brought back alive for research, that would be the best. Apart from that, he also felt something very interesting. That was, on this battlefield, there was a baby girl who had already bred a sword spirit. Why is there a baby? Wu Xian released the fluctuations of the god brain, and shone it on Wang Nuan. He tried to use the power of the god brain to analyze. And the conclusion he got told him that this was indeed a child that had just been born. And the most important thing was, this baby girl's aura was very strange. When he used the god brain to inspect, he actually had a vague feeling. And in the next second, above the baby girl's head, black birds of death that were the same number as him appeared. Like shadows, they were doing the same movement as the birds of death that he was controlling. No, they were not like shadows. These birds of death seemed to be shadows. This baby girl was a lord of the Tao. At this moment, Wu Xian's heart was in extreme shock. What kind of joke was this? Chapter 1685. As an eternal rank existence, Wu Xian controlled the cosmos god brain. He had a kind of disposition as if everything was under his control. Since ancient times, he had seen too many incredible epics. He had seen all kinds of big and small scenes, and he had fought with all kinds of peerless experts and geniuses. In ancient times, some cultivators with only 100 years of cultivation could compete with old monsters who had cultivated for thousands of years. These were geniuses. And these geniuses were later killed by him and made into specimens. Therefore, collecting specimens of these geniuses became a small hobby that Wu Xian hid in secret. But now, a baby girl who understood the Great Way had appeared in front of him. This little hobby, that had been dusty for many years, was stimulated again at this moment. A baby who knew how to use the Great Way at birth? This shocked Wu Xian to the extreme. He was full of excitement, as if he could already see Wang Nuan being made into a perfect specimen by him. This was no longer a genius. It was a genius that had never appeared since ancient times, and he had never had the experience of making such a genius into a specimen. The strong special collecting hobby made Wu Xian go crazy again at this moment. Even if he didn't say a word or move, the terrifying aura release from his body was enough to make people tremble. Wu Xian, your way of thinking is very dangerous. You have no idea what you are facing. Jin Deng Monk, as one of the ancient ones who knew Wu Xian well, advised him. There was no need to read his mind. Just by looking at Wu Xian's eyes and the aura that kept surging up, Jin Deng Monk knew that this person's collecting hobby was acting up again. In the past, because of this hobby, Wu Xian had offended many people. Therefore, every time he fancied a heavenly genius and wanted to use him as a specimen, he would definitely prepare for battle. Even the clan of this heavenly genius would be annihilated. This was to prevent his descendants from seeking revenge. Now ancient times had passed. The moment Wu Xian saw Wang Nuan, Jin Deng Monk didn't expect that his strange hobby would be aroused again. But this time, it seemed to be different from ancient times. Compared to Wang Nuan, those peerless geniuses of the ancient era were not even on the same level. Moreover, behind Wang Nuan stood that terrifying man. But it was clear that Wu Xian hadn't considered that much. His eyes were burning, and in the next second, he chose to attack Wang Nuan. The instantaneous killing intent was shocking. Boom. At this moment, the ground of the supreme world trembled, and rays of golden auspicious light burst forth. An exquisite half-body ancient god with 8 faces and 8 arms appeared out of thin air, wearing a suit of golden armor. One of his arms held a grayish-green ancient sword. With just a wave of his arm, a powerful sword chi swept out, separating the battlefield between Wu Xian and the people of Battle Sect, leaving behind a deep ravine. At the same time, it also dissolved Wu Xian's palm energy. This was Xiang Yi's unique 8-armed ancient god. The moment it appeared, it attracted everyone's attention. Magical rings flowed around its body, and it was filled with an immortal aura. Wu Xian raised his eyebrows and stared at the 8-armed ancient god. He was surprised to find that it was an existence that he had never seen before. This 8-armed ancient deity from the other side gave off a type of otherworldly feeling. When it appeared, golden and purple light surged around it, as if it connected to the underworld. It was extremely unordinary and possessed a tremendous pressure. Yellow Springs Chaos Tao. So that's how it is. Wu Xian observed for a long time, and suddenly realized the origin of this 8-armed ancient god. This was the power of the Yellow Springs Chaos Tao. Back then, a genius who was made into a specimen by him naturally comprehended this Tao method. Logically speaking, this Tao method should have been extinct and should not appear again. Unexpectedly, that person found his successor before he died. No wonder when he wanted to steal this Tao method back then, he couldn't find any memories of this Tao method in that youth's body. Interesting. At this moment, Wu Xian spoke lightly. His eyes were piercingly cold, and there was a kind of killing intent in them. A baby girl who knew how to use the Tao not long after being born, the only koi in the cultivation world that gathered destiny, and this man who inherited the Yellow Springs Chaos Tao. These were all the best subjects that he could use to make specimens out of. Today, all of you here will become part of my collection. Boom. With Wu Xian as the center, the god brain's powerful oppressive force was released in waves, and everyone present felt their qi and blood churn. Monk Jin Deng had told them at the beginning how strong a fully activated god brain was, but it wasn't until this moment that they truly understood how oppressive it was. Qinzong and Xiang Yi cried out in their hearts at the same time. It could only be said that this was Ling Zhenren's strongest enemy in this world. It was only in Wang Ling's universe that they could run into a boss of this level, who could almost be called a monster. They were now at the top of their respective worlds, and the most powerful enemy they had ever encountered wasn't even 1% as strong as Wu Xian in front of them. Is this the Ancient One? At that moment, both of them were in a trance, and felt that this was too terrifying. Even though Xiang Yi had summoned this 8-armed ancient god, and was using his own abilities to resist the pressure, this ancient god that could shake the heavens and earth in his original world felt as fragile as a piece of paper in front of this ancient being. Be careful everyone, the Ancient One is about to make a move. Loopy Toad said with a pale face. As an existence that had just been bathed in chaos and had been reborn to become a divine beast, it went without saying that it was very sensitive to the power of chaos. At that moment, Wu Xian just stood there, and in Loopy Toad's view, the chaos chi surging around him was even more terrifying than the chaos calamity back then. At that moment, the immortal battle between the Ancient One and Battle Sect was about to begin. If they couldn't stop Wu Xian in this supreme world, the entire universe might face a catastrophe. For this kind of specimen maniac with a special hobby, it wasn't just geniuses who could be made into specimens. All the strange creatures and planets in the world, as long as they caught his eye, they could be collected. All of you know nothing about power. All you can do is do something useless. At that moment, Wu Xian's voice rang out in the minds of everyone in Battle Sect. It was just a light sentence, but it carried with it a terrifying change, as if it could reach all the way back to ancient times. Behind him, all kinds of dazzling light were superimposed and released, and countless black ribbons connected to his back before they converged to form a massive purple gold rudder in front of him. I want to show you who is at the helm of the universe, Wu Xian said. He raised his hand to touch the rudder, and with a light turn, the air behind him was instantly annihilated and blurred, as if countless karma and nomological laws had been twisted and severed by this turn. This kind of oppressive feeling was terrifying. At that moment, everyone in Battle Sect was under immense pressure. Ajwa, grenade-throwing senior immortal, and Loopy Toad were shaken by this tremendous force and spat out blood. On the other side, Zhou Zi, who was wearing multiple layers of long johns, shivered a little at this scene after being shot out like a bullet. But he and Wang Wan were the only two people present who were unscathed. Chapter 1686. Wang Wan had the power of Shadow Dao to protect her body. That kind of power of learning from the weak, and using the weak to counter the weak was equivalent. Shadow Dao was a great Dao that grew stronger with the strong. Only a few things could not be replicated by Shadow Dao. Although Anwan was still very young, she could distinguish between good and evil. In the face of such an arrogant primordial one, she could naturally sense the malice emanating from that evil god brain. Girl, don't look at me like that. The universe is about to fall into chaos. If I can obtain your power as the master of great Tao, you might be able to help me set things right. At that moment, the heartless patriarch held the rudder in his hand. Behind him was the void that was constantly being destroyed and reformed, and cracks spread out in all directions like a rainbow spider web. Although Wang Nuan was the master of Shadow Dao and the person whom the heartless patriarch considered to be the most difficult person to deal with, as the rudder of the universe, he was completely uninterested. This rudder of chaos was the most powerful chaos magic weapon he had discovered when he had traveled through the chaos, and it had 60% of the power of chaos. It could almost be said to be an existence that could insta-kill all existing chaos magic weapons. At that time, Heartless had known that as long as he controlled this rudder, he would control the entire universe. But given his age at that time, he was already half a foot in the grave. Even if he constantly replaced his mechanized organs, it wouldn't be of any use, since there was no way to prevent the aging of the soul. Thus, Heartless came up with a solution. That was to find a successor, then turn the God Brain's inheritance ceremony into a scam, and finally wait for his resurrection. With a younger body and a younger soul, plus a 100% activated God Brain, it would be a piece of cake to use this new body to control the rudder of chaos. Full rudder right, he shouted softly, and as he flipped the rudder, the entire horizon of the Supreme World started to tilt to the right. Everyone from Battle Sect stood on the spot, unsteady. As a unit of combat strength, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in an even more tragic state. As the ground turned sideways, his entire body directly collided with the chaos cracks, and he was instantly swallowed up by them and turned into flying ashes. Then everyone saw the ashes that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had turned into reassemble in front of them at a speed visible to the naked eye. As expected of a Senior Immortal, the title of Great Death-Courting Senior has finally been established. Ajwa sweated profusely in his heart. He had long since heard that Wang Ling had customized a set of courting death Dao scripture for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's characteristics. In any case, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had the soul suppression ring which Wang Ling had given him, and which had already been strengthened to plus 999, so he wouldn't die no matter how badly injured he was. This courting death Dao scripture was very suitable for Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. It was said that every time he unlocked a new method of death, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's battle strength would rise to a higher level. Sure enough, after Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal turned into ashes and reformed into human form, his aura was much stronger than before. I died, but I became stronger, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said excitedly. Then in the next second, boom, bam. As the heartless ancestor steered the ship, a bolt of primordial divine thunder fell from the sky and blew Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal into bloody foam again. Forget it. There's no need to worry about the true monarch. The perfected lord was constantly becoming stronger. We still have to think of a way to destroy this ship's rudder, Monk Jin Deng said, a complicated look on his fair and handsome face. He never thought that he would meet the heartless ancestor under these circumstances. After not seeing him for so many years, he felt that Wuxin had changed a lot. At the very least, the righteous Wuxin from before was gone. It wasn't just the epic of the universe that had changed, but also people's hearts. Monk, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no way you can break this ship's rudder. You should know very well in your heart. Wuxin laughed. To be honest, the few of you aren't good enough for me. You can barely be considered part of my collection. As he said this, he quickly turned the ship's rudder, and a ripple of spirit power combined with the power of primordial chaos spread out in all directions. Monk Jin Deng set up a Buddhist light barrier to block it. Bang! The two ripples collided with each other, creating a vast ocean of fluctuations and a violent roar. A new cosmic black hole formed at the point of impact. An endless power of primordial chaos, lightning and spirit power were sucked in to form a terrifying storm. Wuxin, it's none other than you who threw the universe into chaos, Monk Jin Deng said with a frown as he tried to hit the ship's rudder with Buddha's palm. standing on the spot. Wuxin sneered when he heard this, completely ignoring Monk Jindang's methods. Boom. He was even more ruthless as he connected his god brain to the ship's rudder in front of him. He didn't need to raise his hand at all, as if everything was under his control. The monk's Buddha's palm was extremely powerful as it fell from the sky, but the heartless ancestor didn't put up any defense at all. The moment the palm was about to fall, he tilted the ship's rudder to the right. In the end, it was as if someone had pressed a remote control button on Buddha's palm as it shifted from its original position to grenade-throwing senior immortal on the spot. Poor grenade-throwing senior immortal, who had just been resurrected, was turned into flying ashes by this palm. He can actually do this. But right now, everyone had no time to care about this unit of measurement that was constantly resurrecting. All their attention was on the rudder of chaos that the heartless ancestor had taken out. No one had thought that the rudder of chaos would actually be so powerful that it could actually change its trajectory. With this rudder, the Wuxin clan patriarch would be an invincible powerhouse. But Buddha's palm was, after all, just an ordinary spell. It was a supreme Buddhist spell that the monk had comprehended himself, and had nothing to do with the great Tao. Thus, the monk was still a little unconvinced. The second Buddha's palm quickly struck toward the heartless ancestor, and this time, it contained the power of 1,000 strands of heavenly Tao. Monk Jindang didn't believe that with the power of heavenly Tao, this palm could still be controlled by this strange rudder. But the result was beyond everyone's expectations once again. The rudder was too strange. As it moved, it actually exuded a terrifying aura of the beginning of the primordial world, and the powerful chaotic chi was as vast as the sea, which submerged the entire supreme world on the spot. Before Monk Jindang's second palm could strike, its trajectory was changed to that of Wang Yuan. Furthermore, as the rudder changed its trajectory, the palm actually became stronger. How can this be? The power of the rudder was already beyond everyone's expectations. Just as Wang Yuan was about to take up a defensive stance, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of her. The man slowly crouched down, picked up little girl Yuan with one hand, and very skillfully placed her on his shoulder. Little girl Yuan also obediently lay there like a pendant. His movements were so slow that everyone could clearly see his every move, but at the same time, they were unbelievably fast. In the next second, the man came back to his senses and gently exhaled in front of him. Buddha's palm, which had been strengthened by the rudder, was once again reflected back with 1,000% more power. Chapter 1687. The most important and unique ability of the Chaos Rudder was that it could instantly attach a specific invisible antenna to all attacks, which could then be remotely controlled. Whether it was a heavenly Tao spell, an ordinary spell, a magic weapon, or a spirit sword attack, everything could be controlled by the Chaos Rudder. However, when the Heartless Patriarch used the rudder to change the original trajectory of this palm strike to attack Wang Yuan, this man who had suddenly appeared actually just exhaled and changed the trajectory he had set. Furthermore, it was 1,000% more powerful, which was beyond the Heartless Patriarch's understanding for a moment. This man didn't have a rudder. Why could he change the trajectory of a spell? For a moment, the Heartless Patriarch's mind was a little muddled. He used the rudder to change Wang Ling's trajectory again. And in the end, this Buddha's palm was more than 1,000 times more powerful than before as it blasted into the distance. In the distance, a huge mushroom cloud rose from the flat ground, illuminating the entire supreme world. A hole was created in the sky by this palm, and countless galaxies hung down from the hole, sprinkling down a terrifying multicolored light with the power of chaos. This multicolored light was extremely gentle and beautiful, but anyone below the ancestor realm who touched it would instantly be burned to ashes. Everyone couldn't help feeling awe in the face of such a scene. Only Wang Ling and Wang Yuan were unmoved. Wang Ling wasn't afraid of this to begin with. Besides, the scene in front of them wasn't too big of a deal. While the Heartless Patriarch was a very powerful immortal, in Wang Ling's opinion, his battle strength might not even be as strong as that of the grave god. When he picked up Wang Yuan, the only thing he felt was that Yuan was hungry. No matter how poor he was, he couldn't be poor in education, And no matter how hungry he was, he couldn't be hungry for his little sister. Little girl Nwan was still growing, and she definitely needed nutrition. So how to fill little girl Nwan's stomach was Wang Ling's #1 problem. Compared with the grave god last time, there weren't so many tentacle monsters here that could be used as grilled squid material. Furthermore, the heartless patriarch in front of him was a mechanized cultivator who had nothing but engine oil and gears in his body. He couldn't feed his own little sister these things. Fortunately, Wang Ling was a clever little devil, and his reaction was very quick. He immediately set his eyes on the starry light in the distance that contained the power of chaos after the Buddha's palm had broken through space. Ordinary people couldn't touch this light, but the siblings could. It was also an excellent material for making milk powder. It contained a huge amount of chaotic energy, which was definitely enough to replenish little girl Nwan's stamina. At this moment, the entire place was silent, and it could be said that there was no one there. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling's side as they wondered what he was going to do next. After all, with a normal person's train of thought, they would absolutely not be able to imagine that this deadly chaotic glow could actually be used to make milk powder for Wang Nwan to drink. In the next second, Wang Ling activated the power of the king's eye and sucked in all that light. Ling Jinren, what is he doing? Using the king's eye to gather the chaotic rays? Xiang Yi asked. He's probably preparing for a big move. After all, he's little Master Ling. We can't understand his thinking, said Loopy Toad. Could it be used for something else? Qin Zong asked. At that moment, everyone in Battle Sect was discussing what on earth Wang Ling's move meant. They also didn't understand why he was collecting the chaotic rays in the king's eye. After all, if it was the king's eye that launched a shock wave of its own accord, the destructive power of destroying everything in sight was much more terrifying than the chaotic rays. Thus, there was no need to rely on this method of accumulating power to increase the power of the king's eye. Could Shifu have come up with some new spell? Ajwa was full of anticipation. After all, his current opponents were different from those of the past. In the past, his opponents had all been confined to Earth and could be dealt with a single slap. But now, his opponents were all at the universe level. If they weren't born from chaos, then they were the ancient ones who had transcended mortality. One slap was already beyond repair, but the fancy beating could still continue. Ajwa felt that Wang Ling's moves had basically never been repeated since he ran into a universe opponent. Every time he faced Wang Ling head-on, he would make new discoveries and experiences. Then, with these new discoveries and experiences, he would either stop thinking forever or turn into dust in the universe. Lying on Wang Ling's shoulder, little girl Nwan looked like a soft pastry with a hungry expression on her face. It'll be ready soon, Wang Ling said softly and soothingly telepathically. His face still didn't show much of an expression, but the natural gentleness he exuded toward his little sister still deeply touched Lotus Sun's eyes. In that moment, Lotus Sun was clearly in the inner world, but she felt a faint jealousy in her heart. She knew that this kind of behavior was very childish, but she still couldn't help it. Wang Ling wanted to kill her too much. There were times when Lotus Sun couldn't tell whether this piece of wood was real or fake. He would always inadvertently do something unexpected that was completely unlike his usual style. And it was very natural, especially when he was with little girl Nwan. Thus, she began to reflect in the inner world. Maybe there was something about little girl Nwan that Wang Ling especially liked? Earlier, Lotus Sun had heard from father and mother Wang that little girl Nwan would also be going to number 60 high in the future. In other words, she could actually be considered little girl Nwan's senior sister. At that moment, Lotus Sun felt that it was very necessary for her to visit the Wang family's small villa in person as a senior sister, and improve her relationship with little girl Nwan. Although it seemed very shameful to place her hopes on a little girl for a lifetime of happiness, Lotus Sun couldn't care less now. As long as it was useful, it was fine. Just as Lotus Sun's imagination was running wild. On the other side, Wang Ling frowned and began to focus his gaze on the chaos rudder in the heartless patriarch's hand. Making milk powder was one thing, but it was, after all, milk powder made from chaotic glow. And a milk bottle that could hold it might have to be of a certain standard. Even if he had enchanted an ordinary milk bottle, it still wouldn't be strong enough. Little girl Nuan might crack as she drank. It wouldn't be good if the little girl got scalded. Wang Ling felt that he had never been so considerate as to actually think hard about making milk powder for his little sister. Sure enough, Mother Wang wasn't lying to him. Making milk powder was really a profound subject. So now he focused all his attention on the chaos rudder, because this was an excellent material for making milk bottles. Chapter 1688. Seeing the look in Wang Ling's eyes, the heartless patriarch finally smiled a little. You know what's good for you, kid. My chaos rudder can attack and defend. No matter how strong you are, it's hard for you to resist the power of my rudder. If you stop now, you and your sister will still have a chance to live. It was clear that the heartless patriarch had yet to understand what kind of players he was facing. After all, most of the ancient ones had taken it upon themselves to surpass Dao ancestor Wang. Now the heartless patriarch had successfully used some means to revive himself and activate his god brain to 100%. He could transfer his consciousness at any time, which was equivalent to having the ability to live forever. In addition to the various magic treasures that he had accumulated during the ancient times, as well as the ship rudder that had 60% chaotic power, in terms of the strength on paper, the Wuxin ancestor's current strength had already reached the level of Dao ancestor Wang, even if it did not surpass him. As an ancient one who had set Dao ancestor Wang as his goal back then, he naturally regarded himself as an invincible existence to be able to reach this level of combat strength. Therefore, he was extremely arrogant and didn't take Wang Ling and Wang Nuan seriously at all. He could sense that the teenager and the baby girl standing in front of him weren't ordinary people, but had a variety of great Dao abilities, and were more talented than the geniuses he had seen back then. However, because of the foundation he had accumulated over the ages, he didn't believe that these two hotheads, who added up to less than 50 years old, could compete with the foundation he had built up over the ages. I need to show you what the gap is. Facing Wang Ling, the heartless patriarch's mind stirred at that moment, and a strange golden dragon scale appeared in his hand. He muttered an incantation, and the dragon scale jumped in his palm. Then it rapidly spread out on his body like fish scales, turning into armor. In an instant, his entire body exploded with an incomparably dazzling light, so dazzling that it was dazzling to the eyes. Dragon Emperor Divine Armor? Monk Jindeng's expression changed instantly when he saw this thing. Although this armor hadn't come from chaos, it had clearly been processed and baptized by chaos. In theory, all magic weapons could be baptized by chaos, and thus gain more power than before. However, this baptism process was risky. If the baptism failed, everything would be in vain, and even the magic weapon could be destroyed, never to return to its owner. But the Golden Lamp monk could tell that the Dragon Emperor Divine Armor in front of him had been baptized more than once. The Dragon Emperor Divine Armor, which had 40% chaotic energy, had been baptized at least 20 times. Therefore, the Golden Lamp monk's face instantly turned cold. He was really surprised by the heartless ancestor's luck, and was even more surprised by the appearance of the Dragon Emperor armor. This was the natal magical treasure of Priest Long, who was known as the demonic dragon, one of the ancient 6 heroes. In ancient times, they were publicly acknowledged to be below Dao ancestor Wang in terms of battle prowess, and they were on par with each other in all aspects. They were the 6 great figures who were evenly matched. They were crowned the 6 heroes of eternity. However, no one had mentioned this epic of the 6 martialists of eternity, ever since they had gone into hiding in the universe. There had always been rumors that the immemorial 6 heroes entered the primal chaos vortex in order to search for the true meaning of primal chaos and never returned. The auras and messages of the 6 people also disappeared completely, as if they had disappeared from the universe. In other words, the Dragon Emperor Divine Armor, which originally belonged to Priest Long and should have been a legendary item that had disappeared from the universe, had now reappeared, and it was taken out by the heartless ancestor. This made the Golden Lamp monk, who was also an ancient being, feel a little incredulous. Why would the heartless ancestor have something that belonged to the 6 heroes of eternity? Could it be that he had seen the 6 heroes after they disappeared? Full of doubts, The heartless ancestor sneered again. Monk, you seem to be surprised that I took out this divine armor? Yes. After all, this Dragon Emperor divine armor originally belonged to Priest Long, one of the 6 heroes. But it's a pity that such a good thing can only belong to me now, and I still have a lot of it. He laughed arrogantly, and the Dragon Emperor divine armor on his body was shining like a fiery stone, emitting a kind of cosmic red flame, with a kind of extraordinary and amazing power, bursting out with a frightening light. Under such strong pressure, the people of the battle sect were almost in a state of defeat, and just setting up a barrier to defend was already very difficult. This Dragon Emperor divine armor was indeed very extraordinary. It gave off a sense of oppression, and when it was worn, it also emitted a kind of chaotic raging flame. It was a kind of purple-gold cosmic flame that could burn anything that approached it. Wang Ling examined it with the power of the king's eye, and his expression didn't change much. This Dragon Emperor armor was indeed a lot stronger than ordinary toys, but Heartless was still too immature to rely on it to withstand his attack. At that moment, Heartless saw the right opportunity, and his expression turned murderous. His palm and fingers descended from the sky with the kind of power that could crush the sun, the moon, and the stars as he swatted at the siblings. Wang Ling's heart was as calm as an ancient well, but at that moment his eyes inadvertently revealed a murderous glint. He didn't mind Heartless attacking him, but attacking Anwan was out of the question. Anwan was just a newborn child, but the other party was actually so unscrupulous and merciless in the face of such a baby. This already touched his bottom line a little. Even if he had no emotions and didn't know what anger was, this spontaneous feeling of discomfort was already enough reason for him to attack Heartless. According to the old Wang family's latest teachings, an older brother should protect his younger sister unconditionally. He should do his best to put an end to anything that could hurt his younger sister. If he was attacked by gangsters or other lawbreakers, he should fight back with all his might if necessary, regardless of the cost or the consequences. How dare this person offend Ling Zhenren like that? He's courting death. In the distance, Qin Zong said angrily when he saw Heartless attack Wang Ling and his sister. His reverence for Wang Ling was in fact no less than Ajwa's. After all, the latter was a man whom Qin Zong revered like a god. Boom. Heartless' palm and fingers fell from the sky and turned into a huge phantom that stretched for thousands of li, making it impossible to see its trajectory clearly. At that moment, Wang Ling raised his hand and countered with a palm strike. At that moment, the powerful force of the palm overflowed from the surface of this supreme world, and the explosive destructive power formed a magic ring that spread out in all directions with Wang Ling as the center. Wang Long! Under the force of Wang Ling's one palm strike, the ground of the entire paramount world actually sank hundreds of feet. Bang! Finally, the Heartless Patriarch, who had attacked Wang Ling and his sister, had a puzzled expression on his face. In the face of the counterattack, he was sent flying all over the sky like a kite without a string, and it took him a long time to stabilize himself. He spat out a mouthful of blood. There was disbelief on the Heartless Patriarch's face. His Dragon Emperor divine armor had actually been smashed by Wang Ling's palm. But if it hadn't been for the Dragon Emperor divine armor protecting him just now, the power of that palm would have pulverized him into powder. Chapter 1689. The Dragon Emperor divine armor had saved his life at this critical moment. If it hadn't been for the armor's protection, the Heartless Patriarch knew that he would have died long ago. In the end, he had underestimated the power of Wang Ling's palm just now. Who would have thought that the power of this palm could actually make the ground of his supreme world sink dozens of feet? This terrifying and ferocious explosive force was so destructive that he couldn't resist it at all, and was sent flying on the spot. When he came back to his senses, the Dragon Emperor divine armor, which had been baptized by chaos dozens of times, had already been reduced to dust, and there was no possibility of it being repaired in the distance. Everyone from Battle Sect marveled in their hearts. Although this scene was already within expectations for those who were familiar with Wang Ling, when they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't help feeling shocked. If anyone's mind was blank at that moment, it was none other than Ryoko Kimiya. This was no longer a question of whether you had a lot of questions. Instead, it was a question of whether you had a lot of friends. The shocked expression on Ryoko's face was almost indescribable. It was very much like those exaggerated manga characters. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have been able to imagine how strong Wang Ling was. Is this still the classmate Wang Ling I know? She covered her slightly agape mouth with extreme astonishment as she witnessed the famous scene of Wang Ling smashing the Dragon Emperor Divine Armor with one palm and beating the heartless patriarch to the point of vomiting blood through the visual image shared by Monk Golden Lamp in the inner world. But what surprised her even more was yet to come. Because Wang Ling didn't look like he had any intention of holding back at all. His movements were no longer as hesitant as they had been at the beginning, and he took the initiative to launch a new round of attacks. Whoosh! Wang Ling exhaled. This was the essence of primordial qi, a substance derived from the condensation of primordial qi. At that moment, not only had Wang Ling condensed it out of his body, but it was also mixed with a kind of primordial qi, which gave it an incomparably sacred feeling. In an instant, the aura of Great Tao filled the whole area, and an incomprehensible voice of the universe rang out from Wang Ling's body. This is impossible. How can this be? At that moment, the heartless patriarch felt his worldview shatter. He couldn't believe that such a voice had actually come from Wang Ling's body. Furthermore, it was the voice of multiple Great Tao. This voice, which could only be transmitted in the universe, had actually come from a teenager's body. So what did this mean? This meant that this youth's body might be the embodiment of the universe. Of course, this was just the heartless patriarch's own guess. He could not imagine that such an outrageous thing would happen in front of him. Truly, it was outrageous in the capital. This was a very astonishing sight. When Wang Ling spat out this primordial essence mixed with the power of chaos onto the ground of this supreme world, a great Tao lotus actually appeared out of thin air. Heavenly Tao, Fate Tao, Shadow Tao, Divine Tao. All kinds of great Taos turned into lotus petals that held up this great Tao lotus from the ground. It was only now that everyone from Battle's sect realized that apart from the powers of these great Taos, Wang Ling actually had more great Taos. Because this lotus of great Tao had a total of 28 petals. When the great Tao lotus directly rose from the ground, Wang Ling's eyelids twitched, because he never thought that he would actually have 28 kinds of great Tao. Could it be that the grand Tao he cultivated in was too powerful, and it suppressed the other grand Taos, causing him to be unable to notice it normally? Although Wang Ling's expression was as tranquil as an ancient well, he was extremely shocked in his heart. He clearly remembered that when he had forced back the demon world's attack 6 years ago, his great Tao lotus had only had 2 petals. He never thought that today, 6 years later, it would already have 28 petals. Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh at such a barbaric growth. But even he didn't expect the great Tao lotus to have already grown to this extent by the time he released it again. For the others, this was naturally even more stunning. When the lotus bud bloomed, a slender and elegant crystal fairy revealed her graceful figure in the heart of the lotus. Her entire body was crystal clear, and her face couldn't be seen. Her extremely graceful body was draped in a thin layer of gauze, and she looked peerless. She was clearly no more than 3 inches tall, but at that moment, she was radiating astonishing spirit power. The moment she opened her eyes, boundless spirit light was released, and a terrible light swept out in all directions, illuminating this supreme world. Don't be presumptuous in my territory. The heartless patriarch couldn't take it anymore. He was well aware of how powerful Wang Ling was, but he couldn't just stand by and watch Wang Ling act presumptuously here. This was clearly his world, and he was the master and god here, but a hothead had turned the tables on him. Didn't he want to lose face? Today, even if I have to pay any price, I will kill you. At that moment, Heartless' state of mind had changed. At first, he had planned to turn Wang Ling and Wang Nuan into specimens for his collection, but now he couldn't care less. He just wanted to do whatever he could to kill them. This great Tao lotus was extraordinary, but most of the great Taos weren't Wang Ling's main Taos, so Heartless thought that it might not be as strong as he had imagined. He pushed the fluctuations of the god brain to the maximum, intending to form a spiritual link with the entire supreme world. Then, instilled with the vast will of the world, a terrible creature broke through the ground. It had been forcibly summoned by him using the power of the god brain and the will of the world. It was also a terrible monster that Heartless had created through his continuous research. This tall and sturdy creature had countless faces, and the most obvious one was actually a dragon head with tentacles growing out of it. A long dragon neck stretched out from its bloated body and spewed chaotic flames. It was surrounded by arms and claws, like a combination of all kinds of ultimate creatures, and gave off a strong sense of oppression. Like the great Tao Lotus, this strange multi-faced creature also had the power of multiple great Taos. What's this? Asked Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. I never thought he would even capture the spirit of Taoist Long's Dharma idol, and also capture so many indescribable creatures from the great Tao sect, and combine them together. Monk Golden Lamp was equally horrified, but when he turned to look at Wang Ling's calm expression on the battlefield, he was completely relieved. Indeed, by finding creatures with different great Taos and then combining them, they could indeed achieve a similar effect as the great Tao Lotus in Wang Ling's hand. But the difference was that these great Taos weren't the Heartless Patriarch's own. This person still didn't know anything about power. Yeah. At that moment, Wang Nuan, who had been lying on Wang Ling's shoulder the whole time, was also eager to try it out. She raised her hands and gave instructions as she spoke to the fairy that the great Tao Lotus had evolved into. What is Spiritual Master Nuan saying? Most people in Battle Sect didn't understand. Only Loopy Toad understood. Little girl Nuan is telling that Tao Lotus fairy to start fighting everyone. Chapter 1690. The aura released by these lotuses of great Tao was so astonishing that it was beyond ordinary people's imagination. Although the dragon head monstrosity in front of him had the same composition as Fairy Tao Lotus, the difference in aura was still very obvious. Especially after Tao Lotus Fairy entered battle mode at Wang Nuan's command. As the fairy, who was only a few inches tall, swung her lotus dress, a powerful aura of great Tao spread out in an instant, shaking the entire world and affecting the nomological laws of this supreme world. The aura under the lotus dress was endless, and it carried a kind of power that could pry open everything. The overflowing power of chaos shuttled through the void, causing time and space to flow as if it carried a kind of power of disorder. Boom! The dragon head monster summoned by the Wuxin ancestor made its move at that moment. One of the dragon claws in its body was like a tentacle that suddenly extended infinitely from its body and grabbed at Tao Lotus Fairy. The earth and sky were turned upside down with one claw, and it was incomparably fierce as it covered Tao Lotus Fairy. Tao Lotus Fairy didn't say a word. She closed her eyes slightly, and with a kind of peerless aura, she stretched out her slender little finger with only a few inches of her body. In an instant, everyone seemed to see a divine moon appear behind Tao Lotus Fairy. Cold, bright, and insufferably arrogant, there was a mythical aura spreading. She aimed her telepathic finger at the dragon claw. In the eyes of the people of Battle Sect, Tao Lotus Fairy's finger was so small that it was almost the size of a sesame seed in front of the huge dragon claw. However, when this sesame seed-sized finger collided with the dragon claw actually exploded into pieces on the spot. It was directly smashed into pieces. The power of just one finger had easily smashed the mountain-like dragon claw of the dragon head monster. Although the Tao Lotus Fairy that Wang Ling had summoned was small, her power was indeed unparalleled. After the dragon claw was smashed, the pain of the backlash was quickly reflected on the Wuxin ancestor. He started to feel pain in his brain, and he should have directly spat out a mouthful of blood, but when the blood reached his mouth, he swallowed it back into his stomach. As a primordial one, he didn't want to lose his composure in this kind of situation. He didn't want to be in such a sorry state. However, Wang Ling's strength was still far beyond his imagination. He even started to feel a little desperate. He couldn't figure out how such a person could survive in this world. He was less than 20 years old, but had so many great Taos. Although Wuxin didn't show it, there was already a clear fear in his eyes. Although this gaze was fleeting, Wang Ling still managed to catch it. In a confrontation between experts, it was a battle of momentum. Once such a look appeared, then it meant that Wang Ling's defeat was already decided. In order to better protect Wang Yuan, he hadn't done it himself, and had instead summoned the Great Tao Lotus Fairy to take care of it for him. He was clearly aware of Fairy Tao Lotus combat strength, so he wasn't worried at all about the outcome of this battle. Boom. Perhaps it was because she caught the trace of fear in Wu Xian's eyes. Fairy Tao Lotus acted decisively again. She still didn't speak a single word. She directly broke free from the remaining Tao Lotuses, and she transformed into the most dazzling shooting star that soared into the sky. After that, she used her slender leg to fiercely slap the body of the dragon head-sewn monster, causing an enormous explosion to resound, and it caused everyone to be extremely shocked. No one doubted the power of this kick. It was so strong and fierce that it could break everything as it swept across the battlefield. The dragon head-stitched monster suffered a painful blow, and the countless faces on its body began to distort. Endless wails rang out from all directions. Tao Lotus Fairy's kick directly caused the monster's huge body to cave in. The dozens of faces on the monster's huge body seemed to have been crushed by something as they twisted into a ball. Whoa! The heartless patriarch finally couldn't bear the pain of the backlash. The blood he had just swallowed surged out of his body again, and he spat it out on the spot. At the same time, he felt a sharp pain in his head, as if it was going to split open on the spot. On the other side, Tao Lotus Fairy, who had activated her battle mode, was ruthless. Her small figure moved rhythmically as she split into several shadows that attacked the monster from all directions. With each kick, the heartless patriarch vomited a mouthful of blood. After 4 kicks, the heartless patriarch fell from the sky to the ground like a meteor that had lost its light as he knelt on the ground. His originally delicate and handsome face was no longer so, and he began to look old. Each of Tao Lotus Fairy's kicks was so powerful that they could shatter stars and break a person's time. It was only then that Heartless realized that among the 28 great Tao that Wang Ling possessed, there was actually one. The legendary Time Tao. Although it wasn't his main great Tao, it was the Tao that controlled eternal life. It was a Tao that he had always dreamed of mastering. This young man had clearly comprehended this great Tao, but hadn't regarded it as his main great Tao, and had instead set it aside. The heartless patriarch found it hard to believe. Thus, each of Tao Lotus Fairy's kicks carried the power of time. One kick after another, she kicked the heartless patriarch from his delicate and handsome appearance into a doddering old vegetable. He couldn't even stand steadily as he knelt on one knee and shivered. The wrinkles on his face were especially obvious, and he instantly lost all his dignity. As an ancient being, Heartless was extremely ashamed and resentful. This was such a misfortune, and even more so, a great humiliation. I haven't lost yet. Tao Lotus Fairy didn't waste any words. Even though Heartless had been reduced to such a miserable state, she still showed no mercy. After activating battle mode, she would only follow Wang Ling's instructions to complete her task. Bang! With another flick of her finger, she used the primordial finger on the face of the dragon-headed stitched monster. In an instant, the entire land of the Supreme World split open, and like a cake being cut, it was sliced into tiny grids, densely packed and evenly divided piece by piece. A huge amount of energy directly seeped in, and instantly disintegrated the stitched monster into pieces. Countless pieces of flesh exploded, and then turned into powder bit by bit as the power of chaos seeped in. Puff! The heartless patriarch spurted out blood again. Unable to resist, he fell to the ground. There was basically no suspense in this kind of battle. From the moment Tao Lotus Fairy made her move, it was already predetermined. From the moment Wang Ling decided to kill Heartless at all costs, he had already taken the initiative. He didn't have the strength to resist at all, and the violent beating left everyone in battle sect dumbfounded. After confirming that the Heartless Patriarch had been completely beaten to the ground and couldn't get up again, Tao Lotus Fairy returned to the Great Tao Lotus. Then, the petals of the lotus closed again, and turned into a bolt of light that was sucked back into Wang Ling's king's eye. That's it. Everyone in battle sect was suspicious. Of course not. Earlier, this was just Tao Lotus Fairy's performance. It wasn't Wang Ling's turn yet. Although the heartless patriarch in front of him was already a dying dog, Wang Ling didn't intend to show any mercy at all this time. Bang! Bang! Another 2 loud bangs rang out. Wang Ling brought Wang Nuan with him. The brother and sister pair gave the heartless patriarch another slap. This ancient being who had clamored to turn them into specimens. Finally, at this moment as the supreme world fell apart, it turned into a meat patty and stopped breathing forever. Chapter 1691. The heartless patriarch's death could only be described as tragic. When Wang Ling and Wang Nuan moved their palms away, his body was already completely unrecognizable as a human. Because this supreme world was in an alternate space and not on Earth, it was completely outside the law. So Wang Ling hadn't had much to worry about. If this had happened on Earth, he might have been sentenced for excessive self-defense, under existing cultivation laws. Furthermore, he and Wang Nuan had each received a palm strike. The destructive power of this brother-sister combination palm technique was too strong, and there was no way to clean up the mess. The supreme world has collapsed. It seems that the heartless ancestor is really dead, Xiang Yi said after sensing the aura fluctuations in the space. After all, it was Ling Jinren and spiritual master Nuan's palms. When each of them received a palm strike, it was like the hearts of young men who had been rejected. Monk Jin Deng said at that moment. Hearts of young men. That's right. These hearts of young men are like a crushed plastic bottle. This kind of wound can never be repaired. Not necessarily, Lupi Toad added at that moment. Why do you say that, little friend Zhua? Jin Deng was puzzled. Isn't it just a crushed plastic bottle? I just need to blow on it. Everyone. Lotus Sun and Kamiya Ryoko were the only ones who looked bewildered and didn't know what to say. Elsewhere, in the illusory realm of nothingness, the last group of people who were still dealing with the indescribable creatures swiftly received news of the heartless ancestor's death. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei had been sent to use the special little corpse wrapping picture to collect the creatures. At that moment, they had successfully completed their task and returned victorious. They moved extremely quickly and followed Wang Ling's instructions without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Who would have thought that just as they were about to report back to Wang Ming, the heartless ancestor would also die at the same time? A confrontation between experts was just this plain and boring. As expected of Ling Jinren. Although Li Xian and Zhang Zipei had already anticipated how the victor of this battle would be, they never thought that the heartless ancestor, who was said to be invincible after activating his god brain 100%, would actually die so quickly. I'll have to trouble you two seniors to bring the little corpse wrapping picture to Ling Ling. Wang Ming had already possessed Jia Bugui's body for some time, and had fused his brain waves earlier. At that moment, his face looked a little strange. How is Mr. Ming? I feel like you're not feeling well. It's within my expectations. After all, the brainwaves in this body are only a small part of my main body, so I won't be able to hold on for long, Wang Ming said. In order to hide myself completely, I even fused my will with the original owner of this body. But as time passes, the original owners will return. I'll be kicked out. What do we do now? I discovered some interesting things in this illusory realm of nothingness, and this enormous imperial city. It'll be helpful for my own research. Speaking up to this point, Wang Ming took out a deep blue crystal card from his clothes. This was the copy crystal card that he had made when Li Xian and Zhang Zian were on a mission. It could copy his current brainwave state and transfer it to the card. How about this? Take this crystal card with you. The crystal card contains some information that I have obtained from the illusory void. When we get back, just give it to my real body, Wang Ming said. Li Xian and Zhang Zian looked at each other, then raised their hands in salute. Yes, Mr. Ming. Wang Ming's current state was actually equivalent to a small clone spell. After the mission was completed, his clone would disappear and his brainwaves would dissipate, which was very normal. Now that the heartless patriarch had been dealt with, there was no one to manage the illusory void and the entire imperial city, so Battle Sect naturally had jurisdiction. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wanted to wait until the situation in the imperial city was stabilized before handing it over to Huaxiu Alliance. If Huaxiu Alliance didn't want it, he could directly use the geographical location to open a Battle Sect branch or something. Wang Ling snapped his fingers, and everyone was moved back into the Imperial City. Immortal Toya had already been waiting here for a long time. Although the mission this time had been relatively successful, some people had still been injured. Thus, after receiving a notification from Li Xian and Zhang Xian's clone, he had swiftly followed them into the Imperial City. Right now, the Imperial City was in a state of chaos. In the absence of order, the gate of the Imperial City was wide open. Countless rich people in the core area drove their carriages to the slums and began to fight for a safe place with the poor people there. Of course, these problems would be resolved after Battlesect took over, and peace would be restored to this technology city as soon as possible. At the same time, the Chaos ship rudder was also brought back. After seeing its master, the Heartless Patriarch, suffer such a miserable death, the Chaos ship wasn't stupid, and knew that it would be useless if it stubbornly resisted. Thus, the artifact spirit of the Chaos ship spoke for the first time, its voice full of fear. Don't turn me into a milk bottle." Loopy Toad rolled its eyes. "It's just a milk bottle. I'm not going to kill you. I was a toad back then, and it's actually not bad to change my appearance. But I still don't want to be made into a milk bottle. My master is kind and merciful. He made you into a milk bottle to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Otherwise, tell me, what use are you?" "But there are a lot of materials in the world that can be used to make milk bottles. But they're not as sturdy as you." Loopy Toad continued to persuade it earnestly. "You're the one who gave you face when my master took a fancy to you. As for the other materials you mentioned, they're nothing more than paper straws in milk tea shops. They can't be inserted, they can't be sucked, and they'll even go soft halfway." Everyone, Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kwamiya, were the only ones who looked bewildered and didn't know what Loopy Toad was saying. "So I advise you to give up resisting," said Loopy Toad. The Chaos ship rudder was in despair. Its original function was to change the trajectory of all things, but if it became a milk bottle, its function would probably change along with its appearance. Yeah. Wang Nuan suddenly said at that moment. As a level 10 expert in baby language, Loopy Toad quickly translated Wang Nuan's words. "Our spiritual master Nuan said that your function won't be changed. Even if it's a milk bottle, it can still be a ship rudder. As long as your body is hollowed out." Hollowed out? That's right, hollowed out to look like a container, and then put a pacifier on top. When you drink it, you can hold it close to you, and it'll be more stable. The Chaos ship rudder sighed in its heart. It knew that now that things had come to this, it was already doomed. There was no way it could escape being made into a milk bottle. Furthermore, it didn't have any room to struggle or resist. As for the rest of the Battle Sect members, most of them were just watching the show. Of course, there was one person who was thinking about something else at that moment. Lotus Sun's mind was currently filled with Wang Ling's birthday present. It was just that she hadn't decided what to give him yet. If it was possible. Chapter 1692. She had never worried about a single gift in the past, because there were too many gifts that could be bought with money in this world. But when it came to Wang Ling, she still wanted to give him something special. At the very least, it had to be something that reflected her sincerity and feelings. After all, a gift that could be bought with money wasn't sincerity. When she was very young, Sunny Yuan had taught her that for cultivators of Huaxiao Nation, giving gifts was in fact a very particular thing. There was also a great deal of courtesy in the gift, and it wasn't without reason that the traditional culture of reciprocity had lasted for thousands of years. Reasonable courtesy in return was an important lesson in interpersonal relationships, and was different from simply giving a gift directly. And it wasn't that the more expensive the gift, the better. The key was suitability. Nowadays, more and more people misunderstood the meaning of gift giving, and often changed the meaning as you gave it. She hadn't believed this before, and it wasn't until now that she realized how unfathomable this knowledge was. It turned out that, when you like someone, you'll really be in a dilemma when it comes to choosing a gift. The more you cared, the more you liked someone. And the more you liked someone, the more you hesitated. After about 20 minutes, Wang Ling had transformed the Chaos ship's rudder into a milk bottle in the shape of a rudder, And at the same time, he had turned the chaos glow which he had put away earlier into milk powder for brewing. The color of this nutritious chaos milk was very beautiful, and it was actually rainbow-colored. Holding the milk bottle, little girl Nwan gulped down the milk, her soft little face full of happiness. It looks delicious. Resting her hands on her knees, Ryoko Kamiya looked at Wang Nwan drinking milk. No girl who saw this scene wouldn't feel overflowing with maternal instincts. She thought Wang Nwan was too cute. For a moment, she even had the dangerous thought of having a baby with Jua. As expected of spiritual master Nwan, only Ling Jinren's and spiritual master Nwan's physiques can withstand this chaos milk. Monk Golden Lamp's eyes curved into a smile. To Wang Ling and Wang Nwan, milk powder brewed with chaos glow didn't seem like much, but this kind of milk actually had a strong after effect and could easily go to the head. If someone else drank it, even if it was just a mouthful, it would feel like they had been forced to drink hard liquor. If their physiques were slightly weaker and they drank too much, it was very easy for energy to overflow and cause their bodies to explode. So, Senior Golden Lamp means that my body will explode? Hearing this, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's interest was piqued. This can also be considered unlocking a new way to die, which will be very helpful for improving my courting death Tao scripture. As expected of a perfected cultivator, when the rest of the battle sect heard this, they all exclaimed in surprise. This great death-courting senior was now on the path of constantly unlocking new ways to die, unable to extricate himself. Since ancient times, it was unheard of to increase the intensity of one's cultivation through constant death. Although he would be resurrected, but the pain of death could still be felt. There were all kinds of ways to die. Some of them even had to die in excruciating pain. Based on a normal person's train of thought, no matter how strong the courting death Tao Sutra was, it was impossible for them to learn such a method to increase their cultivation. As for Wang Ling and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, it could only be said that one dared to teach and the other dared to learn. Of course, if grenade-throwing Senior Immortal succeeded in his studies in the end, his combat strength would be unparalleled. In the later stages, as long as he unlocked a new way to die, the increase in his combat strength would be much greater than the accumulation of experience that a monk would gain in one reincarnation. At that time, for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, one death was equivalent to one reincarnation. Furthermore, a monk would need to endure the experience of his current life before he could enter the next reincarnation. Just the growth potential alone was a different story. Senior Immortal, it's done. Qinzong and I have already set up BattleSec's transmission array according to your instructions. It connects directly from BattleSec's true venerated hall to the main hall of the castle in Imperial City, Xiangyi said at that moment, carrying a black sniper rifle case on his back. He and Qinzong had worked together to smoothly set up this green passageway. The follow-up work was to wait for BattleSec to completely take over the current situation in the technology city. But there was one thing that was a little unfortunate for now. After this incident in the illusory land of nothingness, he and Qinzong wouldn't be able to stay here for long. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already used to observing people's expressions, and he could tell what Qinzong and Xiangyi were thinking. He immediately said, "After this ordeal, both of you are already guest elders of my battle sect. If you don't mind, why don't you stay here for a few more days? In any case, when you go back, Brother Ling can send you back to the previous world line, and you can even specify a time point. It won't affect you. Is that really okay?" Hearing this, their eyes flickered. They looked at Wang Ling, who shrugged nonchalantly. Of course, Wang Ling wouldn't have agreed to an ordinary person's request. But Qinzong and Xiangyi, they were special cases. "Thank you so much, Ling Jinren and Senior Immortal." Both of them immediately bowed and nodded. It wasn't often that they could stay by Wang Ling's side and learn like this. Although the green transmission passageway had already been set up, because of the twists and turns in the space, the internal structure of the passageway was very complicated, so a third-party medium was needed for the transmission. Wang Ling directly reorganized the Rubik's cubes that were used to seal the living creatures into something similar to a space elevator. The space inside was incredibly large, and could hold up to a maximum of 100 trillion tons. Battle Sect was divided into two groups. One group would stay behind to connect with them, and the other would go back to share information on the technology city. Because he needed to take care of little girl Nguyen, Wang Ling didn't go back right away. Contrary to his expectations, this time, Lotus Sun actually didn't think of any way to get on the same flight as him. She directly pulled Kamiya Ryoko's hand into the elevator, looking like she was in a hurry to get back. Wang Ling, see you on Earth. Before she left, she was still full of smiles as she greeted him in a natural and unrestrained manner. As soon as the elevator doors closed, she immediately dialed Sunny Yuan's number. Kamiya Ryoko was startled. You can even get a signal like this? Ajwa smiled. Senior Golden Lamp has already blessed Masteress's phone, so it's not a problem at all for the signal to cross dimensions. You can even make calls from the third dimension to the second dimension. That is to say, you can talk to those fictional anime characters? In theory, it's completely possible, Ajwa said. If my Shifu enlightens us, we might even be able to bring those fictional anime characters out. On the side, Zhou Zi was also shocked when he heard this. He knew that Ajwa had planned all this so that he could smoothly become Master Wang's disciple and gain the approval of that Master Wang outside. After this incident, it could be said that Zhou Zi's view of the world had been completely refreshed. His Grandmaster was too strong, so strong that he even wondered if he was human. Chapter 1693. Chaos, Darkness, and the Fear of Drowning. This kind of pain was an aftereffect of anyone who had fought Wang Ling. The second before he was killed by Wang Ling, the heartless patriarch had used the last of his strength to separate his brain waves and become something drifting in the universe. He originally wanted to silently enter the consciousness of the Battle Sect members on the field and patiently wait for the counterattack. However, the moment he separated from the consciousness, the Battle Sect members' consciousness suddenly exploded. However, the moment he separated his brain waves, they were captured by an inexplicable force, as if they had been wrapped up in an impenetrable net. Who are you? Heartless found it hard to believe that he had been caught. Like you, we are Avengers waiting for the right time. That laughter rang out directly from the depths of his mind. However, he was too weak at the moment, and he was unable to completely discard this voice. The most important thing right now is to restore your God brain. The voice continued, but your body is no longer there. Do you have a way? Heartless asked. Intuitively, he could tell that the person who had captured him definitely wasn't on Wang Ling's side. Also, for some reason, he had a strong intuition. He felt that the person he was talking to had also been persecuted by Wang Ling. This was an interaction between victims. Although they didn't know each other well, there was a wonderful telepathic connection between them. It's not hard to solve the problem of the body. I have time cells. After the God brain recovers, I can use the power of time and memory to change you back to your original appearance. At that moment, another voice rang out in his mind. Who are you? Heartless was puzzled. Both of us are victims. You just need to know that we will help you. But the God brain is already broken, and what I have here is only a portion of the brain waves that were separated from it. Restoring it is easier said than done. Actually, it's not that difficult. We just need to find a suitable match, the grave god said. The grave goddess said, and this match is actually on Earth. If the current you were to possess someone's body, how long would you be able to maintain it? No more than an hour at most. That's enough. Baija nodded and said in unison with the grave god. Next, we will help you transfer this memory of yours to another person without anyone noticing. Who? This is a citizen of your city. He's also a wealthy merchant in the core area. His name is Jiabugui. Jiabugui. Wu seemed to have some impression of this person, but he couldn't figure out why it was him. Looks like you still don't know that your world has long been invaded by brainwaves. Baija laughed. This person's name is Wang Ming, and he's one of our future opponents. So what's the plan now? This person is extremely compatible with you, so as long as you cooperate with us to complete this plan of swapping the Crown Prince with a civet cat without anyone noticing, let your brainwaves enter his body quietly, and then possess his body, Baija said. Of course, it's not as if there are no conditions to achieve all of this. Then, let's talk about the conditions. Wu Xian knew that in his current situation, he actually had no other choice. Join us. Baija and the tomb god said in unison. We are called the Avengers of the Old Ones. On the way to the space elevator, Lotus Sun called Sunny Yuan, the head of the Sun family, and there was a hint of urgency in her voice. Grandpa, I want to ask you. She hadn't wanted to trouble old man Sun at first, but the situation was urgent. Wang Ling's birthday was coming up, and she was flustered as she didn't know what to give him to express her feelings. You said you want to give classmate Wang Ling a present, but you don't know what to give him? Sunny Yuan was also stumped by this question. He knew Wang Ling's personality, and it definitely wouldn't do to be too conspicuous and high-profile. How about we give him an aircraft carrier? Sunny Yuan said seriously after thinking for a bit. Aircraft carrier. Lotus Sun instantly choked on the words she had yet to say. Grandpa, isn't this too high-profile? How is this high-profile? It's just a yacht. I didn't give him a spaceship or anything like that. Lotus Sun was speechless. It seemed that her grandfather had some misunderstanding about keeping a low profile. However, with the Sun family's wealth, which was comparable to that of a country, an aircraft carrier was indeed like a yacht. There were no less than 60 aircraft carriers parked in the port that cooperated with Huaguo Water Curtain Group. But Grandpa, even if this isn't too high profile for you, Grandpa, but gifts that can be bought with money aren't sincere, Lotus Sun said. After saying this, Sunny Yuan nodded meaningfully. Oh, that's true. In that case, why don't I give you some rustic words of love? Rustic words of love? Lotus Sun was puzzled. For example, Rong Rong, what's your favorite wine? Sunny Yuan asked. Grandpa, I'm still a student. I know. So this is just an example. Sunny Yuan said. Suppose you said these words to classmate Wang Ling definitely won't know how to answer. So when the time comes, you can act according to the circumstances and confess. Then what should I say next? Lotus Sun asked. This question is very simple. Loopy Toad sighed. Of course it's with your forever as earth wine. Lotus Sun and the others. Sunny Yuan. For another example, you can tell classmate Wang Ling that you're Ling Air and he's Ding Dang. Loopy Toad. Because jingle bells jingle. Lotus Sun and the others. Loopy Toad. Oh, that's right, I know of another rustic word of love. You can say that you're the immortal of sword and fairy, and he's the legend of chivalry, because it's the legend of sword and fairy and knight. Lotus Sun and the others. Question mark. Although Lotus Sun didn't really understand, she felt that there was something wrong with Loopy Toad. After asking a few more times and not getting the answer she wanted, Lotus Sun hung up the phone in disappointment. The main reason was that she felt that if she kept talking, her thoughts would collapse even more. Kamiya Ryoko suggested, seriously, Rong Rong, do you want to give yourself away and give Wang Ling a surprise? Lotus Sun's face instantly turned red. Will that really work? To be honest, that was what she had thought before, but she didn't know if it would work. I think it will. Kamiya Ryoko continued to come up with a plan. Look, when the time comes, you can find an excuse and say that classmate Wang Ling's crispy noodle snacks won a prize. In addition to giving him a limited edition crispy noodle snack, you can also throw in a big beautifully wrapped gift box, but you're hiding in the big gift box. Chapter 1694. Will this really work? Lotus Sun was skeptical about Kamiya Yoshiko's plan. Regardless of whether this method was feasible or not, no matter how well she hid herself, Wang Ling would still be able to see through her at a glance. In the past, when she didn't know how strong Wang Ling was, she might have given it a try. But now that she knew Wang Ling's true strength, trying it again would just be asking for trouble. Not necessarily. There might be a chance. Monk Jindang knew what her concerns were, and he couldn't help smiling. Miss Rong is still worried that you'll be seen through. But if we work together, we might be able to deceive everyone. Actually, the monk didn't really want to help her, but wanted to see if there really was a way to hide it from Wang Ling. Challenging Wang Ling was Monk Golden Lamp's daily routine. Even if he couldn't win in terms of raw strength, the monk still wanted to challenge him in other aspects. Although it was said that a monk shouldn't have a competitive heart, the monk didn't think that it was competitive. It was clearly the desire to improve himself because he was brave enough to take on challenges. But whether or not he had the right to challenge her depended on Lotus Sunday. On the side, Audjoie, Josie and Loopy Toad all vaguely felt that this didn't sound very reliable, but it was clear that they couldn't stop Lotus Sun's birthday surprise. What happened next was that one dared to speak, and the other dared to listen. Then Senior, what should I do? Lotus Sun asked. If we want to keep this a secret, we need to do it in 3 ways. Monk Golden Lamp suggested. First, we need to divert attention. Like Miss Yoshiko said, give him enough crispy noodle snacks. That way, Ling Jinren's attention won't be on the big gift box that Miss Rong is in. That makes sense. Senior, please continue. Lotus Sun believed him. Secondly, we need to make an issue of the packaging. When the time comes, this penniless monk will personally help Miss Rong. Miss Rong only needs to use the golden talismans blessed by this poor monk and stick them all over her body. Although I probably won't be able to fool Ling Jinren, I can at least resist him for a while. Monk Jin Deng came up with a plan. Then the most important point is Ling Jinren's King's Eye. With the King's Eye, he has the ability to separate the false from the true, and any disguise is useless. Hence, I'll need Brother Zhua's help with this. Me, pointing at himself, the expression on his face gradually turned savage. Haha. Sure. How can I help you? This was not the first time he, as a disciple, had cheated his master. In any case, it was to foster a relationship between Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, so he was naturally duty-bound to do this. I remember that Brother Zhua has the King's Eye sharing mechanism. Then, the moment Ling Jinren received the gift, could he use the shared King's Eye ability to temporarily turn off its passive ability? It's a passive ability that prevents you from removing the false from the true. The monk said, of course, you don't need to resist for too long. A few minutes is enough. This, rubbing his chin, he frowned and said, I've never tried this before. I don't know if it'll work. Does this count as deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors? Brother Zhua, are you thinking too much? How could this be considered as deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors? It's obviously a beautiful story of marriage. I see. Audjoie nodded. All right, I'll try. Seeing a group of people discussing their future plans so seriously, Kwamiya Ryoko began to regret her suggestion. Regarding the gift, she had only mentioned it casually. How could she have known that Lotus Sun was trying everything out of desperation? She really believed it. She didn't know why, but she had a bad feeling. At night, after returning to the staff apartment, Audjoie immediately drafted an acceptance plan for BattleSec's official takeover of the technology city in the realm of illusion this time. His position in BattleSect was special. In addition to his position as a guest elder, he was also one of BattleSec's ministers. Currently, BattleSect was divided into 8 divisions, and Audjoie's 8th division was mainly responsible for 3 things: supervising the sect's overall discipline, coordinating the sect's future direction, and planning current development plans. To put it bluntly, in online terms it could be summed up as dog management plus dog planning. Was BattleSect attacking the technology city in advance this time? Reporting it without approval was in fact a violation of the rules? So in this case, Audjoie needed to emphasize the salient point in the plan: the danger of this technology city. He would report it to Huaxiu Alliance after making it an emergency evacuation. And there could only be 2 subsequent outcomes. One was that after BattleSect completed the connection, Huaxiu Alliance would take over the technology city. First, that was for BattleSect to take over and smoothly expand. Of course, was it one more technology city or one less technology city? This wasn't important to BattleSect at the moment. BattleSect was now the #1 sect. They had a strong army and were powerful. What they needed to do wasn't to blindly become stronger, but to find a way to stabilize their current position. Thus, as the head of BattleSec's 8 divisions, Audjoie naturally had to ensure that nothing went wrong. Of course, in addition to this acceptance plan, Audjoie also had another plan, which was to take Zhou Zi in as a disciple. After this incident, Ajwa felt that Zhou Zi was already fully qualified to become his disciple based on his outstanding performance. Now all that was missing was a nod from Wang Ling. Li Xian and Zhang Zijin were among the first batch of people to go back. They had heard about Wang Ling's birthday, but they didn't care much about Lotus Sun's plan. They were more concerned about what they should give Wang Ling regarding this point. Both of them had a tacit understanding that no one had more authority to speak than the person they were about to meet. In Wang Ming's private research institute, the two of them followed the instructions of his brainwave clone in the technology city, and handed the memory chip to Wang Ming himself. The moment he saw the chip, Wang Ming knew what had happened, and he couldn't help smiling as he pinched it. So that's how it is. He copied his memories from the technology city. That's very much like my clone's style. That Mr. Ming from the technology city said that there are important research materials inside. After all, my opponent is that legendary immemorial being, the man who mastered core technology in ancient times. It will naturally be helpful for my research. Wang Ming couldn't help sighing when he said this. It's just that it's a pity. Li Xian looked at Wang Ming. Mr. Ming, are you referring to that Shoucheng? Wang Ming nodded. I heard that after he was captured he was split up, and the heartless ancestor's disciple fused that sent into his brain. That's right. Zhang Zijin nodded and said, it's a pity that brother Li Xian and I arrived too late, otherwise we might have been able to save him. It's all fate. Wang Ming sighed, then directly inserted the chip in his hand into a helmet-shaped decomposer, and then put the helmet on his head. Then, let's see what kind of useful information I have on the other side. Chapter 1695. All along, Wang Ling had a faint intuition that while some of the major events that had happened recently seemed to have come to an end, they might not have truly been resolved yet. The dark forces behind the scenes might be plotting a counterattack plan, and they might form a hemp rope to deal with him. It sounded a little scary. It even made him a little flustered. However, this panic was not for himself, but for his family. It was true that he was very strong, but Father and Mother Wang were at the end of the day ordinary little cultivators who hadn't even reached the foundation establishment stage. As for his little sister Wang Nuan, she was even more of a little girl who hadn't formally developed yet. Although it was important to accumulate combat experience, he was still in the growth stage. It would not be good if little girl Nuan fought too many times. According to teacher Luo Xiang, letting little girl Nuan continue to fight might constitute the crime of employing child labor to do dangerous labor. Wang Ling felt that he couldn't afford to be accused of this. Thus, he felt that it was necessary to make various preparations. Not for himself, but for his family. It was clearly not enough to have a few soul transformation monsters guarding the house. If Father and Mother Wang went out, they might run into other dangers. It was precisely because of this that Wang Ling hadn't cancelled Father Wang's Qilin arm, which he had enchanted the last time. Everyone knew that this pair of Qilin arms had transformed into a Qilin maid. One of them was called Kato. One was called Eagle. It was now intelligently controlled, and had a very strong learning ability. Through watching martial arts videos and movies, it had absorbed all kinds of combat experience. Wang Ling heard that Father Wang's inch punch had been very powerful recently. Every punch landed on flesh and his hand speed was extremely fast. It was almost no different from that martial arts star in the movie, and even seemed to surpass him at one point. Of course, this was an effect that could only be achieved when the Qilin arm was activated. Under normal circumstances, the Qilin arm would be invisible. On one hand, it was to prevent the Qilin maid transformed by the Qilin arm from destroying the harmonious relationship between husband and wife. On the other hand, it was to prevent Father Wang from accidentally breaking the keyboard when he was typing. Therefore, only in life-threatening situations would the Qilin arm be triggered and activated automatically. All in all, compared with Mother Wang, Father Wang still had a certain level of self-defense. But overall, it was still not enough. The enemies they were facing now were no longer the arrogant bugs in the corners of Earth. Every single one of them was a universe-level big shot. A being from the Old Days faction, an ancient being, When encountering these people, he had to be well prepared in all aspects. When Wang Nuan had been born, the grave god had wanted to do something to Mother Wang, which had actually given Wang Ling a very important revelation. He felt that it was time to pay attention to his parents. It was Friday, December 26th. For the first time ever, Wang Ling took the day off and didn't go to school. It was clearly his birthday today, but he was worrying about the safety of his parents and the comprehensive defense of the Wang family's small villa. Father and Mother Wang were very touched. Because it was Wang Ling's birthday, he had actually thought of giving them presents. Although the present was a pair of long johns, to be honest, he had been inspired by Zhou Ziyi. In order to protect Zhou Ziyi from danger during this trip to the technology city this time, Ajwa had put on layer after layer the long johns he had given Zhou Ziyi. It directly turned Zhou Ziyi into a Michelin tire. However, the results were surprisingly good. For Father and Mother Wang, who had no defense ability, long johns were indeed the best choice. Of course, he had made some new improvements to the long johns that had been gifted to him this time. It had been upgraded to version 5.0. The new improvements were as follows. 1. Version 5.0 of the long johns will have the same defense as 10 normal sets of long johns. 2. You don't need to worry about your hands and feet being tied up. With one set, you can directly lock down all parts of your body for thorough protection. 3. In the event of an emergency, you can activate a stand-in attack mode. When the time comes, the long johns will summon a powerful stand-in bodyguard to protect you from all sides. Then there was the backyard and the front yard of the Wang family's small villa. After returning from the technology city, Wang Ling had also brought back 096, which had recognized Anwan as its master, and it was currently being kept in the backyard. 096 had originally been a humanoid rabbit-eared creature. Wang Ling had taught it how to change its appearance so that it could transform into a cute rabbit. It was only the size of a teacup, snow white and looked harmless, but from the way it covered its face, it could still be seen that it was 096. That was to say, the Wang family now had Loopy Toad in the front yard and 096 in the back. A dog and a rabbit as security guards. This arrangement was unheard of. What about the feed? Loopy Toad asked at that moment. Compared with 096, Loopy Toad had Dopigua to provide it with private messages at regular intervals. Furthermore, after becoming a divine beast, in addition to ordinary private messages, it could also absorb the power of chaos to replenish itself. But 096 was different. In theory, this type of host creature was also a product of chaos, but in the eyes of chaos, it was a mistake born out of chaos. Thus, its attribute was actually a little strange. It wasn't compatible with chaos, and the power of chaos couldn't provide 096 with normal energy supplements. But Wang Ling had already anticipated this. He took out a grass seed from his pocket and planted it directly in the backyard. This grass seed startled 096 and Loopy Toad at the same time. It's actually sky tomb grass. Loopy Toad was completely dumbfounded. Wang Ling nodded. This sky tomb grass seed had been given to him by Lung Ming. Loopy Toad itself was a manifestation of sky tomb grass, so it naturally had some seeds. The principle was similar to how Sun Wukong plucked out his hair to make other monkeys appear. The key point was that sky tomb grass was different from ordinary grass. It wasn't a product of chaos, but could grow infinitely by absorbing chaos, spirit energy, primordial chi and other kinds of energy. As long as it had enough energy, it would be a perpetual motion machine that could continuously grow taller. It was definitely enough for 096 to use as fodder. As for its growth, Wang Ling had also prepared a chaos sprinkler. The space inside the sprinkler was connected to the universe, and it would absorb the power of chaos from the universe at regular intervals. 096 couldn't absorb the power of chaos to replenish its own energy, so it could use this chaos sprinkler to water the sky tomb grass first. Once it was fertilized, it could directly harvest it as fodder. Of course, apart from Loopy Toad and 096, the fortifications outside the Wang family's small villa clearly weren't enough. So Wang Ling also took out a pair of red paintings from his Wang Jibao pants and stuck them on the back and front courtyards. On the painting was a pair of bearded old men. They looked a bit like the old K from poker cards. It was a common type of defensive magic equipment. Under normal circumstances, the creatures sealed in the painting were a bit like ghosts. However, these ghosts had been processed and purified by humans, and had been tamed to the point of obedience. Take this pair of paintings that Wang Ling had taken out as an example. This magic treasure was called Unparalleled Nation Knight. One of the old men in the painting carried a missile launcher, and the other a Gatling gun. And they looked very mighty and majestic. The most important thing was that apart from the painting, there was actually a couplet on it. It read, "Sweep the spear in all directions, cripple the demon. Bombard the exquisite flying tiger." Chapter 1696. Wang Ling heaved a long sigh of relief after the external fortifications were completed. This way, as long as Father and Mother Wang stayed in the house when the enemy attacked, they would be safe. The Wang family's small villa was now like a cannon, and the word tyrannical could be used to describe it. No matter who it was, they would be able to beat him to a pulp, beat him to a pulp, beat him to a pulp, beat him to a pulp. Throughout the entire process, Unwan obediently lay on Wang Ling's shoulder and watched. This little girl liked to stick to him. And this was the first time Wang Ling had felt a different kind of emotion from Wang Wan when she touched someone else. He actually didn't reject her, which was the most incredible thing to him. But in fact, it didn't take long for Wang Ling to figure it out in his own way. Because little girl Nwan was his blood sister, and one of the most important people to him, he wouldn't reject her. The most important people. Thinking about this, Wang Ling felt like he was thinking about something completely new on his birthday this year. For a very long time, he had never thought about other people's affairs. But now, when he realized how important the people around him were, he suddenly felt the need to protect these important people. These people should not only be referring to his family. He had to admit that he was a little conflicted now. Because according to his usual logic, it was as if these people didn't exist that he could enjoy the kind of tranquil and peaceful life he yearned for. But now, that kind of life seemed to be getting further and further away from him. And he was also becoming more and more used to it. As evening approached, more than 10 familiar figures approached the Wang family's small villa. They were divided into two groups. One was led by Super Chin, and the other was led by Ajua. As Wang Ling's best brother at number 60 high school, there was no reason not to give him a birthday present. For this reason, whether it was Super Chun, Hero Gua or Little Peanut, they had already prepared their gifts. Earlier, the class had also drawn up a list of Wang Ling's gifts. Super Chun had asked around in private, and Wang Ling had then compiled the list and sent it to Wang Ling. Because of Wang Ling's reticence, there weren't many people who were on good terms with him. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have received too many gifts. But the list this time was surprisingly generous. Why are there so many people? When Hirogwa saw the full list, he was a little dumbfounded. Because a lot of people hear that Wang Ling is a mascot. In a sense, giving a gift to a mascot is a tribute that can increase one's luck, Little Peanut said. That's true, but in reality, the situation is more complicated than we thought. Complicated? Didn't you see that there are a lot of people from other classes on the gift list? They don't usually have anything to do with Wang Ling, so why would they give him gifts for no reason? Yes. How strange. Super Chin spread his hands and said, "It's not strange at all. I think it's very likely that these people have also joined the Grey Church." Hero Gua and Little Peanut nodded at almost the same time. They might not believe what other people said, but Super Chen's mouth was real. He had to believe it. Of course, although there were many people who gave gifts, the gifts themselves were not that expensive. They were all high school students, so what they gave was just a thought. Not everyone could give an aircraft carrier as a gift like Lotus Sun's family. Thus, after school that day, Super Chun, Hero Gua and Little Peanut directly delivered the gifts to the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. They had thought that Lotus Sun would also come, but to their surprise, she actually refused the invitation and directly disappeared as soon as the students left. Super Chin felt that it wasn't that Lotus Sun didn't want to give Wang Ling a gift, but that she clearly had her own reasons. It was just that he didn't know what on earth she wanted to do. Given Huagua Water Curtain Group's financial resources, There was nothing in the world that money couldn't buy. But Superchin felt that Lotus Sun definitely wouldn't want to give such an insincere gift. Hirogwa. What do you think Lotus Sun will give Wang Ling? She won't directly give him a house, right? If she directly gives him a house, then oh my god, I'll have to work so hard for so many years. Probably not a house. This gift is too expensive, Wang Ling might not accept it, Little Peanut said. Also, this kind of gift is very tacky. For rich people, a house isn't a house at all, it's just a playing card. When I went to number 59 high school for the exchange meet earlier, I saw with my own eyes 3 girls use their property certificates to play fight the landlord. A straight flush from 1 ring to 9 rings. Have you ever seen it before? Hearing this, Superchin and Hirogwa turned pale with shock. They had no idea this kind of operation existed at all. After a few minutes of silence, Superchin said again, I also don't think Lotus Sun will give him a house, it's too outrageous. It's not like she's getting married. Even if she's giving him a house, she has to think of a way to give herself away first. Hirogwa and Little Peanut understood once more. It turned out that Lotus Sun wanted to give herself away. Elsewhere, another group of people led by Audiobook approached the Wang family's small villa from a different direction. Lotus Sun had been very nervous along the way. It had taken her a lot of time to order the special crispy noodle snacks last night, and it hadn't been easy for her to make it in time. Of course, the most important thing was actually the gift box that contained her present, which Lotus Sun had taken a long time to choose. She had arranged to meet the courier who would deliver the gift box in front of the Wang family's small villa at this time. And everything else had already been arranged. Masteress, you don't have to be so nervous. You have to relax a little. That way I can also relax a little. Ajwa comforted her. Later, when your gift box is delivered along with the crispy noodle snacks, I'll do my best to break the king's eye's ability to separate the false from the true. He was really nervous. After all, this kind of behavior was indeed a little like deceiving one's master and destroying one's ancestors. Who's your masteress? Lotus Sun blushed and hurriedly cast a cooling spell on herself. After she calmed down a little, her willowy eyebrows furrowed slightly again, because the person delivering the gift box hadn't arrived yet. She, on the other hand, was ready. Just as they had planned at the beginning, Monk Jin Deng had prepared a lot of blessed golden talismans for her, and she just had to crawl into the gift box and then stick them all over her body. Ajwa knew that Lotus Sun had put a lot of effort into the custom-made gift box. After all, there had to be a person in the gift box. But when they had gone shopping yesterday, for some reason, most of the surprise gift boxes that contained people looked like coffins. So in the end, Lotus Sun had no choice but to go the custom-made route. Ajwa heard that Lotus Sun had asked a skilled craftsman to tailor-make this gift box. It didn't look like a coffin at all, and was very artistic. Is it that little brother in the red hat? At that moment, Ajwa saw a courier little brother in the distance. Pulling a large box, he slowly rode over on an electric 3-wheeled motorcycle from afar. Through the king's eye, Ajwa could easily see what the custom-made gift box looked like inside the box. Then he sucked in a cold breath. Hiss! This gift box chic was indeed chic. It was made of metal and had perfect curves. It indeed didn't look like a coffin at all, and had been completely custom-made for Lotus Sunday. But the problem was, this damn gift box was in the shape of a person. Chapter 1697. On Wang Ling's birthday, Wang Ming had initially wanted to give him the detailed concept of the first version of the new talisman. He planned to call it the Talisman of Eternity, and privately thought that it was the best gift he could give so far. Compared with all those fancy things that money could buy, only the design and development of the Talisman of Eternity could bring Wang Ling eternal happiness. A lot of people had different definitions of happiness. So for Wang Ling, what on earth was happiness? As a brother, Wang Ming felt that he had thought this through thoroughly. For Wang Ling, happiness was simple and ordinary. He especially hoped that one day he could personally tell Wang Ling, "Congratulations, Lingzi. You can finally live a normal life." But there was still a long way to go before he could realize this vision. After analyzing the memory chip he had brought from the illusory land of nothingness through a specialized analysis helmet, Wang Ming suddenly felt his brain and body sink into a long-lost fatigue. Logically speaking, given his brain capacity, it shouldn't have been a problem at all for him to process this short-term memory, but now he actually felt like he was in a trance, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. When he got up, his body swayed and he almost knocked over the coffee on the table. Jiayin darted forward and steadied him. "Don't push yourself too hard." "I didn't," Wang Ming said weakly, his face deathly pale. He was a little uncomfortable, but he didn't know why. It was just analyzing data. How could he be so tired out? Could it be the crystal card? Wang Ming vaguely sensed that something wasn't right, and he hurriedly grabbed Li Xian's hand. "Senior Li Xian, let me ask you, who else touched this crystal card?" "Mr. Ming gave it to us, and no one else touched it," Li Xian replied. "Then who saw it while it was being made?" "Brother Zidao and I used the small corpse picture that Ling Zhenren gave us to seal the remaining shelter creatures, and we didn't see how the crystal card was made," Li Xian answered truthfully. After saying this, Wang Ming instantly had a bad feeling. If there was no one to accompany and witness the process of making the crystal card, then the situation would be very thought-provoking. At that moment, Wang Ming's thoughts were in a mess. With a headache, he placed Jai Yin's, Li Xian's and Zhang Zipei's hands on top of each other, and then held them himself. "Inzi, Senior Li Xian, Senior Zhang Zipei, what I'm going to say next is very important. Please remain calm after hearing what I have to say. Mr. Ming, please speak your mind. We will listen to Mr. Ming's arrangement. It's like this. I suspect that my brain has been implanted with a consciousness. To put it simply, you can think of this consciousness as a virus in a computer program." "Consciousness? What will happen to Mr. Ming?" "It's hard to say. This consciousness is very strong. I've already tried to use my own power to cleanse it, but it's useless," Wang Ming said. "And now, the worst-case scenario is that I might become a completely different person. Then what should we do?" At that moment, Jiayin composed herself and looked at Wang Ming. Wang Ming instantly smiled bitterly. "Why don't you cry? I'm already like this. Moreover, if I become another person, I might not be able to change back. What's the use of crying? I believe you have a solution. Moreover, you must change back." At that moment, Jiayin held Wang Ming's head. "Wang Ming, you must always remember, if you can't change back, it is very likely that you will be arranged into the legendary Taran plot." Wang Ming. Jiayin's explanation was too terrifying, and Wang Ming was instantly enlightened. As it turned out, this obsession to avoid being turned into a Taran played a huge role in the subsequent progress. On the other side, Ajwa and Lotus Sun were still at a loss over this shocking humanoid gift box in front of them. The courier in charge of delivering the gift box was provided by the merchant. In the face of the customer's dissatisfaction, the courier was slightly helpless. "Miss Sun, this gift box was completely customized according to your requirements. The key is that it really doesn't look like a coffin at all. Moreover, it looked very exquisite. The workmanship is excellent. Moreover, our boss knows that Miss Sun wants to give it to her boyfriend as a surprise." "No, he's not. He will be in the future. Our gift box took the boss an entire night to make, and he's very proud of it. When you open it, there's a hidden compartment, and it even comes with a baby bed." The courier little brother rubbed his hands together. Their boss had actually already taken this step into account. No girl could resist the thought of loving the person she liked for the rest of her life, and then having babies. Often, it only took a few design elements related to babies to increase the overflowing maternal instincts of these girls. This was the general trend. It was precisely because of this that there were more and more mother fans these days. Sure enough, after hearing this, Lotus Sun couldn't hold back anymore and immediately made up her mind. "No need to say anymore, I'll buy it." Ajwa. Thus 10 minutes later, Ajwa delivered a truck of limited edition crispy noodle snacks and a humanoid gift box to the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. Mother Wang, who had come out to help sign for the gifts, was startled. "Little Zhua, these are gifts for Shifu, but I'm not the one giving them." I'm just in charge of escorting them, Ajwa said as he wiped at his sweat. "AI just come. You don't have to give anything, you're too polite." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Mother Wang focused all her attention on this very distinctive humanoid gift box on the side. Ajwa immediately became nervous. Don't be anxious, let me explain. Little Zhuozi, you don't need to explain. Mother Wang was dazed for a long while before she shook her head. Children are all grown up, it's easy to hold it in during growth and development, so it's normal for them to need their own outlet. It's not like that, Auntie. I know. Ling Ling's situation is special, and normal people definitely can't take it, so this must be specially made, right? Special materials won't spoil so easily. Ajwa dropped his forehead into his hand, feeling like he couldn't explain himself at all. This really isn't. I understand, little Zhuozi. Thank you for being so thoughtful. No, Auntie, this really isn't inflatable. Inflatable sandbag? That material is too lousy. Oh, so Auntie was talking about a sandbag, then it's fine. Chapter 1698. After successfully delivering the box, this seemingly harmless courier little brother quickly pedaled away from the Wang family's small villa on his tricycle. After driving the tricycle to a remote corner, he dialed a number. The person on the other end of the line said something to him, and the little brother quickly replied, "Yes, boss. The custom-made gift box has arrived." "Oh. That is to say, I have to find another body, right? Then I have to directly abandon this body? I see. Do you want me to make it look like a car accident? Don't worry, boss. This subordinate will definitely do it properly." After hanging up the phone, the courier little brother's pupils quickly dimmed, and then split into tentacles. He rode the tricycle to the nearest road and magnified his perception. After searching for several minutes, he finally fixed his target on a Tesla hybrid electric and spirit power vehicle that was driving over on autopilot from afar. A family of 3 was happily sitting in the back seat of the vehicle, and he sped up on the tricycle. Bang! A loud bang. The vehicle collided with a huge explosion. With his body burning in flames, he jumped on the tricycle, lifted the roof, and saw a man and a woman whose faces had been disfigured from the collision tightly hugging an unconscious girl. Everything was as he had expected. At this moment, human kinship played a crucial role. The little girl, who was only 10 years old, was immediately protected by her parents after the collision and did not die. And this was the result he wanted to see. Mission accomplished. He couldn't help curling his lips, and an invisible golden light separated from his body and attached itself to the little girl's body. From the next moment onwards, he was no longer himself. Her name was Chen Xiaomu. She was the sole survivor of a car accident with a courier little brother. At the same time, she was one of the great old ones who had continuously attached themselves to human consciousness on Earth. She was the same as the ultimate hunter among the great old ones. This group also had an exclusive code name. It was called Thought Plague. On the other side, Wang Ling had received a lot of birthday presents. Super Chun, Hero Gua and Little Peanut had actually arrived first. After handing over the presents to Wang Ling, the 3 of them sneaked into the house, as if they had secrets to tell Wang Ling. Wang Ling was dazed when he heard Super Chen's words. "Do you know Wang Ling? I think Lotus Sun wants to give herself to you." It wouldn't have mattered if someone else had said this, but when Super Chen said it, a bead of sweat immediately broke out on his forehead. "You want to give yourself to him?" There was no need for that. How could he accept a living person as a gift? Most importantly, he felt that Lotus Sun was useless and not as delicious as crispy noodle snacks. In addition, Wang Ling had no intention of dating at all. If he accepted this gift, what if he was misunderstood? These were all questions he had to consider. As the saying went, a rabbit didn't eat the grass near its burrow. Wang Ling had never felt that their high school relationship was reliable, and he felt that Lotus Sun had still been hot-headed for the moment. Furthermore, his attitude toward her was purely that of friendship, and it was impossible for him to consider long-term development at this stage. No, not just at this stage, but also in the future. Wang Ling, since we're already here, we should take things as they come. She's already so obvious, so you'll just accept it? Hirogwa said. Don't worry, we brothers will definitely support you fully. But isn't it a little too introverted to fall in love now? Old Pan won't be happy, said Little Peanut. She's a pedantic old fogey, Hirogwa retorted. Besides, how can this be called dating? It's clearly called promoting friendship. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun are in the process of promoting friendship, waiting for each other to grow up. Wang Ling. What F*** King waiting for each other to grow up? Ling Ling, Miss Lotus has brought you a birthday present. You have to thank her properly later. Let's go out for dinner or something. At that moment, Mother Wang brought Lotus Sun's birthday present to Wang Ling. He was very satisfied with a pile of custom-made crispy noodle snacks in a giant gift box. Next to this gift box was a human-shaped gift box, which made Wang Ling want to return it. Ah! The weather's pretty good today, Wang Ling. Happy birthday to you. We'll take our leave first. Super Chin was already grinning from ear to ear in his heart. He hurriedly patted Hirogwa and Little Peanut on the shoulders and practically chased them out of Wang Ling's room, before quickly disappearing. It could be said that Super Chen's insight wasn't bad. Wang Ling felt that if he really liked Lotus Sun, Super Chen's move would definitely be the most powerful assistant. To be honest, Wang Ling had planned to directly send Lotus Sun back, but when he saw this human-shaped gift box, he felt that something wasn't right. Don't bother. The secondary eye's anti-control ability is ineffective. Wang Ling glanced out the window and spoke telepathically to Audra, who was lying in ambush outside the villa. He had been waiting outside the Wang family's small villa for an opportunity to act, but hadn't expected to sense Wang Ling's dead fish eyes staring at him from his room on the second floor. For a moment, Audra felt a little disappointed. As expected of Shifu, his insight was unparalleled. But from Wang Ling's tone just now, Audra had sensed some seriousness. Could it be that there was something wrong with the gift box? Given Shifu's temper, if he had already known that the gift box contained his mistress, he would have directly sent her back, without even opening the box. But now Wang Ling hadn't done that. Audra suddenly realized what the problem was. He immediately went upstairs and saw Lord Ma and Loopy Toad sitting around the human-shaped gift box as they examined it. What on earth is going on? Audra asked. There's something wrong with the gift box. Miss Roan can't come out, Loopy Toad said. Audra. How is that possible? Loopy Toad. Someone has tampered with the gift box. It will explode when opened, and the force of the explosion won't be small, so I'm afraid a lot of innocent people will be affected. In addition, the explosion may cause cosmic energy radiation, which will cause irreversible damage. Looking at what we've seen so far, it's probably the work of those old rulers. The god of the grave? It could be him, or it could be his followers, Loopy Toad said. Of course, Little Master Ling told me all this. You can't open it by force? If you do, Miss Roan may suffer unbearable pain. Even if she can be resurrected, there's no guarantee that her soul will remain intact under the intense pain. Loopy Toad said. Of course, apart from that, there are also crispy noodle snacks in the gift box, which are all custom-made, out-of-print flavors. It would be a pity if they exploded. Audra. It seemed that this was the main reason why they couldn't open it by force. Then what do we do now? Audra asked. Loopy Toad. We can only let Lord Ma try first and see if he can somehow send Miss Roan out of the box alone. Chapter 1699. Using the teleportation spell to locate the target. Lord Ma's mood at that moment was extremely complicated and extremely nervous. As a man in love, he actually had a feeling that this man next to him said that he wanted to save crispy noodles and acted like a role model for our generation. But in fact, the one he really wanted to save was Lotus Sundae. It was just that he didn't say it out loud because of his personality. He didn't know if his intuition was right, but rescuing Lotus Sun had impressively become his #1 mission. And it was very obvious that he could only succeed. He couldn't fail. If he couldn't save her, he felt that he was probably going to die. As a toilet bowl that had been used by the men of the Wang family in turn, and the only man who had seen the buttocks of the men of the Wang family. He was now the strongest among the gremlins who had been enlightened, and the only gremlin who had formed an ill-fated relationship with the cosmic god tree. For the first time, Lord Ma had a serious attitude as if he were performing surgery, and transported a specific person. The next second, there was a flash of light, and next to Wang Ling, Lord Ma, who was covered in cold sweat, instantly disappeared, to be replaced by a soft body covered in talismans. Because she had been in the human-shaped gift box for too long, and also because she had overheard the conversation outside. She had been a little nervous, causing Lotus Sun to feel a little short of oxygen. Now that she had been rescued by Lord Ma, her legs immediately turned to jelly. At first, she was going to fall toward Ajwa, but he didn't intend to help her up at all. Instead, he secretly used the gravitation spell to turn Lotus Sun around, and she instantly fell on Wang Ling. Lotus Sun. Wang Ling. The two of them looked at each other in dismay. Only Lotus Sun's face heated up, and she hurriedly let go. At that moment, Ajwa walked over with a natural expression on his face, as if nothing had happened. "That's great, Miss Lotus is fine. But it seems that this matter hasn't been resolved yet." It was true that Lord Ma had saved Lotus Sunday, but in fact this couldn't be called saving, because Lord Ma had taken advantage of the fact that the gift box hadn't been paying attention to take his place. He had ensured that there was always a person lying inside the human-shaped gift box, so that it wouldn't explode. Of course, this was also the best method that Lord Ma had chosen after comprehensive consideration. He could save Lotus Sun and shift the risk to himself. He was just a toilet bowl. Even if the gift box exploded in the end, he wouldn't feel any pain. Wang Ling fully acknowledged Lord Ma's performance. Unlike ordinary human cultivators, it was Wang Ling who bestowed the souls of the gremlins they enlightened. Therefore, Lord Ma's move of exchanging a leopard cat for a crown prince, swapping himself in, would make things much easier. Wang Ying cooperated well. He had been watching on the side for a long time, and knew what Wang Ling was thinking at the moment. He immediately took this humanoid gift box, and used the warp shrinking technique, to get far away from Earth to another corner of the universe. This was the place where Wang Ying and Sun Yinger often played the planet wall tapping technique. God knows how many spirits of planets have been harmed by him. Therefore it was the most suitable time to detonate it. In any case, these planet spirits would be repaired by him in the future. Bang! A few seconds later, a huge explosion came from the depths of the universe. A huge mushroom cloud appeared out of thin air, accompanied by a powerful explosion that extended for several light years, blasting everything in its surroundings into pieces. Cultivators below the Tao God realm couldn't hear it. Wang Ling's ears twitched as he looked in a certain direction in the air. Following his line of sight, he saw that it was the location of the explosion. The scale of the explosion was bigger than Wang Ling had actually expected. This was because the spirits of the planets had also been detonated at the same time, resulting in a chain of explosions that were like toppling dominoes, instantly increasing the range and power of the explosion to an even greater level. It was hard to imagine what kind of destruction it would cause if something of this scale happened on Earth. It was likely that the entire solar system would vanish. And no ordinary person could set up this kind of method. Then, Wang Ying returned with Lord Ma, who had been repaired in an instant. Lord Ma had personally experienced the explosion. Although he was the most senior of the gremlins, his face clearly didn't look too good. He shuddered slowly, still feeling some lingering fear. He had never experienced an explosion of this scale before. If it hadn't been for the special nature of enlightened gremlins, it would have been difficult for him to survive. "Teacher Ma, what on earth happened?" Ajwa imitated the tone of a very popular ghost animal video recently, but Wang Ling rolled his eyes at him. "Shifu, don't blame me. I just wanted to liven up the atmosphere." Ajwa smiled awkwardly. "Sorry, Lord Ma, it's all because of me." Lotus Sun blamed herself a little. "This has nothing to do with Miss Rong. Even if it had been someone else lying in the gift box, the other party would have done the same. It was just that Miss Rong happened to be being used." Lord Ma thought for a bit and said, "Also, this kind of method isn't something an ordinary person can do. Master asked for leave today to specially build fortifications at home, in order to prepare for a rainy day and defend against external enemies. I never thought that these people would actually move so quickly. Which people? Lotus Sun asked. The ones we dealt with before. They were at least at the cosmic level, Lord Ma replied. But didn't Wang Ling already? Since they're cosmic level figures, they must have their own way of resurrecting. They won't be so easily wiped out. Even a speck of ash could be the key to their resurrection. Then their strength must have been greatly reduced, Lotus Sun said. That's right. But if these defeated people band together and plan to deal with them together, it'll still be a little troublesome. Lord Ma sighed and said, when you find a pile of cockroaches crawling all over the floor in the kitchen, there will always be fish that slip through the net with one slap. But if you blow up the kitchen, you might bring disaster to yourself and even your neighbors. Hearing this, Lotus Sun nodded slightly. She knew that this kind of thing wouldn't be easy to deal with, especially for Wang Ling, who had to be cautious in all aspects. Then, is there anything I can do to help now? Lotus Sun asked. It's very simple. At that moment, Loopy Toad jumped onto the table and looked at Lotus Sun as it said, you just need to protect yourself. Looking at all the signs, they've already set their sights on you. So it's best to upgrade the 6 cores Mysterious Sea. Upgrade 9 cores? Lotus Sun was astonished. 9 cores Mysterious Sea. With this combat strength, it's enough. Lord Ma also nodded and said, but I also sensed something strange in the explosion just now. At that moment, Lord Ma opened his mouth and a transparent ball of light came out. If your eyesight isn't strong enough, you probably won't be able to see it. I caught this thing in the explosion, and it seems to have the ability to control consciousness. Wang Ling's eyes instantly narrowed, because he saw a transparent worm wriggling in this transparent ball of light, and it gave off the scent of the old rulers. Sure enough, this has something to do with the grave god. Ajwa frowned. It's very likely that the other party has already infiltrated deep into our midst. Lord Ma said, this worm can control consciousness, so it can also quietly infect human cultivators. Judging from what they know about us, I'm afraid someone important to Lord Ling has already been infected. Chapter 1700. Lord Ma's reasoning was completely logical. Since an infected person was already next to them, they had to be on guard. Wang Ling closed his eyes and used his search ability to communicate with Book of Sage Immortal remotely. Although he had already sent the book out of this universe, he would still occasionally use it as a remote search engine. After giving it away, the noise from Book of Sage Immortal had indeed decreased a lot, and it was a lot more convenient for Wang Ling to read it now. Because of the long-distance telepathic connection, this annoying iPad wouldn't jump in the face as much, and would only give him the answers he wanted. Of course, Wang Ling felt that this could also be Book of Sage Immortal's way of showing weakness. It was probably trying to make amends for its mistakes. Thought Plague. Wang Ling ruminated on this name which he had obtained from Book of Sage Immortal. This was one of the dirtiest characters among the rulers of the old days. By invading someone's consciousness, they could silently control them. It wasn't just human cultivators, but any living creature with a soul and life would be manipulated by them. Furthermore, the most important thing was, the thought plague would constantly change the bodies it had invaded, leaving no trace behind. The final fate of the bodies that it had abandoned would also be clearly arranged, disguised as all kinds of suicides or accidental deaths, so that there was no way to investigate it. But in any case, the seriousness of this matter was enough for Wang Ling to pay attention to it. Based on what was currently known, the thought plague was extremely contagious, especially after switching bodies. Even if the bodies that had been used became corpses, they could also become new sources of infection. This meant that they would leave their seeds in the corpses, and those who came into contact with the seeds would become new infected people. Thus, if this matter wasn't taken seriously, it might spread widely among human cultivators. As the rulers of the old days of the universe, there was currently no way to identify the true bodies of these creatures with the current cultivation methods on Earth. Once they were parasitized, it meant that they would be 100% controlled. So the first thing Wang Ling had to do now was investigate 3 things. The first was the source of the thought plague. The second was who on earth had sent these thought plague. The third was who on earth had been infected, and how to prevent it. This is the basic situation Shifu was talking about. After summarizing Wang Ling's telepathic message, Ajua verbally relayed the incident to the others in a simple and clear way. Now, as a disciple, he was not only used as a scapegoat, but also for various other purposes. When he said this, Ajua's mind was filled with a scene from a movie. On a dark, windy and stormy night, Wang Ling appeared in front of him dressed like a mafia boss and asked him, Translate, what? It's a pleasant surprise. In other words, we need to prove our innocence now? Lord Ma asked. Lord Ma, you don't have to. After all, you're an enlightened gremlin. Master can tell at a glance. As for the others, don't even think about escaping. Ajua smiled and said, how about this, one by one, we'll ask each other questions to prove our innocence. There were no outsiders here except for Ajua, Lotus Sun and Loopy Toad. It wasn't Wang Ling's idea to prove his innocence, but Ajua's own ideas. Wang Ling didn't stop him, and just watched the show. When Ajua said this, he saw that Lotus Sun's face was bright red, as if it would burn at any moment. How about this, I'll start first. You ask me first, Ajua said as he looked at Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad reacted quickly. Do you like highlands or flat ground? Ajua, flat ground. Ajua, then what's your favorite food? Bone sticks, big meat flies, and so on? Loopy Toad. Of course it's bone sticks with big meat flies in the middle. Very good. Proof complete. One man and one dog cooperated very well, and after asking each other questions, they high-fived each other. Lotus Sun. That's it. Ajua nodded. Of course. Then Miss Rong, do you want to try? Lotus Sun. I'll try. She had thought that he might ask some tricky questions, so she had been a little worried, but the question just now didn't seem special. So Ajua looked at her and suddenly asked, if a youngster who looks better than Shifu appears in front of you, will you fall in love with him? Lotus Sun was a little surprised by this question, but she still shook her head with a resolute look in her eyes. Of course not. She had always been very sure. The reason why she liked Wang Ling wasn't because of his face. There were so many good-looking young men, and as the eldest daughter of the Sun family, she could summon them at her beck and call. But only Wang Ling was special to her. Hearing this, Ajua's expression was one of triumph as he hurriedly asked, why? Is it because you like my Shifu? Hearing this, Lotus Sun knew it was bad. She had been tricked by Ajua again. This bad guy. He only knew how to trick her all day long. He was actually asking questions. Furthermore, it was fine if he kept asking, but he was asking this kind of question. And in front of Wang Ling, how was she supposed to answer? She struggled in her heart, then clenched her teeth and braced herself to deny it. Of course not. Ajua was shocked when he heard this. No. So you're fake Miss Rong. Brother Toad, let's go. Lotus Sun instantly panicked and looked at Ajua with an expression of admitting defeat. Yes. I like Wang Ling. That's fine, right? She was in a bad mood, and the shame of being forced to confess in front of Wang Ling made her want to find a hole to crawl into. Wang Ling's expression didn't change much when he heard this. The main thing was that Lotus Sun had already confessed a few times before, and he was probably a little used to it. He knew that Ajua's love for stirring up trouble was in fact an act of support. But to be honest, Wang Ling felt that it was useless. Because he wouldn't like Lotus Sunday. It was said that there was no such thing as pure friendship between men and women. But Wang Ling felt that this wasn't true at all. He had always felt that he and Lotus Sun had this kind of pure friendship. That was right. It was just friendship. Wang Ling turned his head to look at Lord Ma on the side, and seemed to be giving him some instructions telepathically. Lord Ma immediately understood, and then turned to Lotus Sun and bowed respectfully. Then Miss Rong, please come with me. Where? Lotus Sun asked. Lord Ma. To upgrade Mysterious Sea, of course. Lord Ling has already made an appointment with Senior Golden Lamp, so Miss Rong just needs to come with me to bring Mysterious Sea over. Once it's upgraded to a 9-core spirit sword, Miss Rong will have the ability to protect herself. You won't have to worry about being threatened by the thought plague. With this kind of sword chi protecting you, it will be very difficult for them to invade you. Chapter 1701. Following Monk Golden Lamp into the mountain of Backtrack, Lotus Sun felt like she was revisiting an old place. The last time she had leveled up in the Mysterious Sea here, it just so happened that she had helped Loopy Toad resolve the chaos catastrophe caused by its advancement from a holy beast to a divine beast. This time, she entered again to complete the upgrade of the 9 cores Mysterious Sea. She was unfamiliar with it the first time, but familiar with it the second time. This time, her mood was much calmer than before. She was just a little worried that she wouldn't be able to control the Mysterious Sea after it was upgraded to 9 cores. Miss Rong, you don't need to be nervous. The success rate for upgrading the 9 cores Mysterious Sea is 100%. Since you've already fused it several times, the subsequent fuses won't be that difficult, Monk Golden Lamp said. As for why Ling Junren chose this poor monk to bring Miss Rong here, it's mainly to guard against the surge of energy after the Mysterious Sea is upgraded to a 9-core spirit sword. It's definitely very strong, and I'm worried that I won't be able to control it. Lotus Sun frowned slightly. Her strength had been stuck at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and she was only a hair's breadth away from the golden core stage. Although her battle strength with the Mysterious Sea was far more than that, she couldn't improve her basic realm, and controlling the Mysterious Sea had always been a problem. Just like equipment in games, equipment had a level limit, and if a character's level wasn't high enough, they wouldn't be able to bear the additional attributes of powerful equipment. If she didn't control it properly, it wouldn't just be dangerous for herself, but also for the people around her. This wasn't what Lotus Sun wanted to see. While she was letting her imagination run wild, Tyrant suddenly laughed. Miss Rong, you're thinking too much. Although I've told you before to use Mysterious Sea's power cautiously, I don't think it's worth it. Although this poor monk has said before that Miss Rong should be cautious in using the Mysterious Sea's power, you don't need to worry about controlling it. But isn't it usually? That's true in normal circumstances. Spirit swords, magic weapons, and even some high-level talismans in the cultivation world all have realm restrictions. If your realm isn't high enough, you won't be able to use them smoothly. This is because the cultivator's realm is too low and they don't have enough spirit energy. Using these high-level magic treasures consumes a lot of spirit energy, which they can't afford at all. Monk Golden Lamp said. It might seem like a restriction, but the main reason is that you don't have enough spirit energy. What about me? She asked. Miss Rong already has 6 cores on the Mysterious Sea. Haven't you noticed it after using it for so long? This is because Lady Rong doesn't need to worry about the consumption of spiritual power. Monk Jin Deng said. When the mechanism of becoming one with the sword is activated, Mysterious Sea's power is Miss Rong's power. Under such a passive ability, the problem of insufficient spiritual power can be directly ignored. I see. Lotus Sun nodded. At this moment, Sun Ying'er also appeared and comforted her. I told you, Rong, you're thinking too much. It's impossible for you to lose control. Even if you do, you still have me. And this time, I feel that you and Ling Junren have made great progress. Lotus Sun was stunned. Where did I, Sun Ying'er? It's really big. Look, this thought plague is so dangerous. There are so many people in Battle Sect, but the first thing he thought of was to help you increase your strength. Sun Ying'er wasn't trying to make fun of Lotus Sun like she usually did, but she truly felt that there was a lot of progress between the two of them this time. Although she didn't show it on her face, Lotus Sun was actually overjoyed. On the other side, Ajua, who had been secretly assisting them all this time, was also very touched. After Lord Ma and Lotus Sun met up with Monk Golden Lamp and left the Wang family's small villa, he stared at Wang Ling, who couldn't wait to open the plastic bag of the custom-made crispy noodle snacks, and asked, Shifu, do you have some thoughts about Miss Rong? Wang Ling was very confused, but he didn't deny it. He did indeed have some thoughts. But this was mainly because Lotus Sun had been forced to confess to him after the question and answer session just now. If Lotus Sun continued to stay here, it would be awkward for both of them. Instead of that, it would be better to think of a way to send her away. Besides, Lotus Sun was always in his room, and he couldn't eat crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling had never been in the habit of being stared at while he ate. In the school cafeteria, he usually ate in a corner. This was the basic process. Avoid familiar people as much as possible and force yourself to eat with them. Choose a corner. Snap your fingers. Stop time. Then you quickly finished everything on your plate. Snap your fingers again. And time returned to the classroom. This way, Wang Ling wouldn't feel uncomfortable being stared at while he ate, and eating wouldn't waste any time. Time stop was a very useful trick. There were times when laziness flared up and you didn't want to do your homework at night. You could also bring your homework to school in the morning and use time stop to finish it. It wasn't just for himself, but also for Father Wang. There were times when Father Wang really couldn't catch up with the updates, and he would ask Wang Ling to use time stop to temporarily freeze time. This was also one of the main reasons why Father Wang had been able to update for so many years, rain or shine. You would never know what on earth was behind a web novelist who could continuously update. Maybe it was boxes and boxes of bulb-proof hair growth fluid. Or maybe it was a sun who understood time stop. Lotus Sun was being strengthened, but Wang Ling didn't think it was very reliable to ascertain their identities through interrogations. In the end, an external force was needed. The modern cultivation world couldn't do anything about it, but Wang Zhibao had a corresponding magic treasure in his pants. He took out a bronze mirror called the Immemorial Beauty Mirror, which was the primordial chaos magic treasure of an empress in ancient times. Although it was called a beauty mirror, the truth was that it wouldn't make a person beautiful, and would instead directly reflect their barefaced appearance. Wang Ling looked at himself in the mirror, and found that his appearance hadn't changed much. He then pointed the mirror at Loopy Toad, and found that its dog fur was still as green as before. Loopy Toad. Got it, so I'll just give it to the people in Battle Sect to try. But there are too few of them, so it might be troublesome to test them. Also, if there's too much noise, it might alert the enemy. Wang Ling nodded. This was indeed a problem. So in the first round, he decided to only conduct a preliminary test on the core members of Battle Sect to ensure that there were no problems with the higher-ups. As for the scarcity of the beauty mirror, that was even easier. Wang Ling opened his king's eye. He selected the beauty mirror in his hand, and Loopy Toad saw Ctrl+C appear in his left eye and Ctrl+V appear in his right eye. Then a new beauty mirror was successfully duplicated. Loopy Toad was blank for a moment, and then, as if accustomed to this sight, swallowed the bag of beauty mirrors that it had duplicated. I need some helpers to do the test. Wang Ling spread his hands to indicate that Loopy Toad could choose as it pleased. And Loopy Toad's train of thought was very clear. Almost immediately, it set its sights on Xiang Yi and Qin Zong. These two young fellows were the most suitable to be used as support. The error-free chapters of the daily life of the Immortal King will continue to be updated on the mobile game bar. There are no advertisements on the site, so please bookmark and recommend the mobile game bar. If you like the daily life of the Immortal King, please bookmark. The daily life of the Immortal King mobile game bar is updated the fastest. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.